Good afternoon and welcome to the afternoon session of the Landmarks Preservation Commission public hearing and public meeting of July 28th. We are resuming with public hearing number 2, and I will turn it over to our Director of Preservation, Corey Harala.
Thank you. We'll start with public hearing on item number 2. That's LPC 26-10153, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 231, Lot 8, 427 Broadway in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District. This is a Venetian Renaissance-style warehouse building with French Renaissance-style details designed by Thomas Jackson and built in 1870. And the application is to construct a rear yard addition.
Good afternoon. I'm Robert Strong, the applicant and architect for the project. Essentially, this was basically an office building, but it only had one stair egress and a fire escape with a drop ladder. And it really didn't meet the requirements for egress. So Landmarks gave us permission to put an open fire escape in the rear, and the building department required that it be enclosed. And so we're here as the enclosure made it an addition. This is in a small block in the Soho Landmark District. Most of these buildings in the Landmark District have no rear yard or very small rear yard. None of the buildings in this block have a rear yard except for this building, which we're putting in a second egress stair. Sorry. So these are more pictures of the building. These are pictures of the existing rear yard light well that we're enclosing for the stair. As you can see, it's mostly adjacent brick walls of buildings which are adjacent and the rear windows of 427 Broadway. These are elevations of the rear yard before. This is the roof essentially showing. Let's see, this is the existing stair here, and this is the new stair we're proposing enclosed. These are sections, elevations of the stairs. The only rear modification to the building is in this north elevation where we are enlarging the windows from the window sill down to the floor level to install doors. And you can see in pink the bulkhead of the rear addition stair. This shows that we built an orange mock-up of the of how high the stair would be, and then we took photographs from these 3 locations: Howard Street, Broadway, and Canal Street, and in all cases, it is not visible from the street. Again, more illustrations of the non-visibility. And these are more illustrations of how the stair works. And the stair is actually enclosed with this rock wall panel, which is a fire-rated panel. And it's rock wall enclosed in metal on both sides, giving it a 3-hour fire rating. And that goes around the outside of the stair. And the stair just sets on pad footings that set into the cellar level. There is existing a cellar level room here, which we're removing the roof when we install the stair. And I believe that's all there is. It's a fairly simple project. We're here for The addition, because it's an enclosed stair, not an open stair.
Commissioners, are there any questions? Okay, not seeing any questions. Oh, Commissioner Jefferson?
How do you exit the fire stair to the safety zone?
The new fire stair comes into a lobby, which is located on Howard Street. That's down the street here, and then out to the street. So it exits through a lobby that exists.
Any other questions? No? Okay, we're going to move to testimony then. And I do have some sign-in sheets for people that are here in the room. Let's start with Michael Kirk. If you could just come up to the podium. And state your name for the record. And you have 3 minutes.
My name is Michael Kirk. I'm a resident at 53 Howard Street, which is one of the buildings that, is it on? Oh, okay. Closer? How's that? Can you hear me now? Okay. I'm a resident of 53 Howard Street. I've been there almost 50 years. My building adjoins 49 and 47, which is adjacent to 45. I've been in this neighborhood a long time, and I've seen where construction was not properly, fully vented out by the people doing it. They demolished a building on Grand Street, and I saw the adjacent building at 74 lean 34 inches and ultimately had to be removed. I live in a building that was renovated and was consumed by water because they wanted to deepen the cellar. Underneath our building, because it's adjacent to canal, there's water. I'm nervous about the fact that this presentation doesn't seem to in any way indicate how they're going to handle what they're going to remove. The building currently is under a work stop order because they, without permits, they removed a staircase in that same area. The work stop order is supposed to be valid until April 27th. This is not just an egress staircase. This building is going to be used in such a way that they're seeking to change the C of O from 47 per floor to almost 200. And this staircase isn't just an exit. It's meant to be used by the people within the building to travel from floor to floor. I've been listening to their presentations for the last year, and there's no consistency. Just 2 weeks ago, they presented this building. The same architect presented it as an office. Majority of the floor is being used for office use, and the top floor for a restaurant. Prior to that, and even if you walk by the building today, you'll notice that this space by Lightning Society is being advertised as a ballroom. And it ultimately sees the upper floors as a private club. I think they're seeking to increase the C of O and change it from 47, like I said, to 200. And that's going to really impact on our neighborhood. And I'm afraid that when this is built and excavation is done, it's going to endanger the adjoining building of 47 and in turn endanger the buildings that are also attached to it, 49 and 53. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Marie Dormuth.
Good afternoon. My name is Marie Dormuth, a former zoning chair of Community Board 2. I was lucky enough to be mentored by people like Verna Small and Doris Deether, who were instrumental in creating the Landmarks Law and the Cast Iron District in Soho. This application is dangerous. The information is incomplete and misleading. And as Michael said, the applicant came to the CB2 Landmarks Committee, and the architect stated he didn't even know there was a stop work order for ripping the chimney out. He stated that the staircase, and imagine a 5-story large commercial staircase made of steel and cement, would be light, and it would hardly be used, and that they would excavate in the basement and just dig a couple feet. This is in direct contradiction to what they stated at the CB2 SLA committee, which was that the use would be catering establishments and a large private club, and they're at the buildings department asking for a change of use for a capacity of something like 900 people. This staircase is going to be dropped down in the air shaft 1 inch from a fragile historic building at 47 Howard. I live at 49 Howard, built in 1862. There's a reckless pattern of work with this applicant. We know when they start digging that foundation, water is going to fill up. We've seen it with the property across the street, had a virtual lake for months during construction. We're going to see it today. We're going to see it this afternoon when it pours into our basements again. There's no information on soil tests. There's no information on the water table. We know it's a shallow water table. This is dangerous. I urge you to deny this application based on misleading information and that it will destabilize the buildings. And one last thing, I was there looking at 74 grand when it leaned 30 inches. I knew the people in the building that lost everything. Yes, we gathered the cast iron pieces and a new building was built, but they lost everything. And please consider this in your deliberations. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And the next person, sorry, look with the handwriting, but Ruba? Okay, thank you. And please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Ruba Abunima. I live at 53 Howard, and I object to this plan. I'm going to try and be as quick as possible because pretty much all my notes were covered by the previous speakers. But I just want to say that throughout the tenancy of these people, they've shown a complete disregard for the neighborhood, the people who have lived here for decades, and for the responsibilities that come with occupying a landmark building. I'm really concerned with their consistent inability to file proper paperwork and submit consistent, coherent plans. I don't have confidence in what they're trying to do. And I'm concerned specifically about endangering the neighboring buildings and the surrounding environment. Historic buildings deserve owners and tenants who understand that they're custodians and not occupants. And I'm deeply concerned on how they plan to treat this building and what they plan to do with it. And I don't believe that they have respect for its architectural and historic significance. And that's really, everything else was covered by everyone else, but that's really my point.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else in the room that would like to testify? Okay, then we're going to move to Zoom with Elizabeth Lee to see if there's anybody there that would like to testify.
Those joining via Zoom who wish to speak, please use the raise hand function. You'll be promoted to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute, state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. The first speaker will be Pete Davies.
Yes, hello, and thank you very much. My name is Pete Davies. I'm a longtime resident of Soho and also speaking on behalf of Broadway Residents Coalition. I am speaking in opposition to this application. Please note the major concerns included here. Recent reckless activity at the building demands action by the commission in order to protect this historic structure. Extraordinary care is needed to assure the preservation and protection of both this landmark building and the historic structures nearby. Careless actions at the building are noted on the DOB property profile overview for 427 Broadway. Chronicled there is a problematic history showing recent work without a permit, unpermitted removal, the resultant stop work orders, the issuance of ECB violations, and the implementation of a one-year professional certification restriction, all due to the faults of the applicant and the carelessness of those involved. We ask that you follow the lead outlined in the CB2 resolution for this application and take whatever actions are needed to protect this fantastic building. In order to avoid the sad state of other nearby damaged and destroyed historic buildings in the landmark districts of CB2, assurance from the Commission is needed for full and proper preservation of all the vulnerable landmark structures on this block of Soho. Please note, this proposed work is not necessary for the building to operate under the current certificate of occupancy. The sole purpose for the installation of the proposed intrusive enclosed steel staircase structure is to facilitate a private members club on the upper floors of 427 Broadway, a plan for a high occupancy, massively scaled operation that is being pursued by the leaseholding applicant. That business and use might not be within the usual purview of the Commission, but the work required to make those changes is definitely under the LPC's watch. Please be aware that the New York State Liquor Authority has received 2 separate recommendations from a judge who reviewed the private club proposal and declared that such an operation at 427 Broadway is not in the public interest. Still, the applicant continues to pursue the business, putting the integrity of the building at risk. A key concern is the presentation materials are incomplete and do not contain basic information, as mentioned by previous speakers. We've had information submitted by local land architects outlining details that are insufficient, and those I've included in my written testimony. And I believe they have submitted theirs in writing to you on their own. So again, we ask that you pay great attention to this problem and that you deny this application and demand sufficient information before moving forward. Thank you very much.
Anyone else who wishes to speak, please use the raise hand function. Seeing none, note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 2 recommends denial unless there is confirmation work is completed without risk to the building and adjacent ones, and that a study is conducted on the feasibility of an open staircase fire escape.
Okay, would you like to respond to any of the testimony?
First, like to
Sorry. Oh, somebody just joined. The community board just joined to testify.
Okay.
Sorry.
The next speaker will be Chenault Spence. Chenault, you may unmute and begin your
I'm sorry.
testimony.
Madam Chair and members of the commission, We have great reservations about this application, owing to the presentation as being other than truthful, and to the concern that's very much on all of our minds about the integrity of buildings adjacent to a construction. I would like to simply read the last, if people have a copy of our resolution, number H. Throughout the presentation, the applicant was repeatedly elusive and gave vague and varying answers to simple questions of fact, including about the change of use, made verifiably false statements, and made statements regarding the use of the stairway and other details that contradicted testimony before the State Liquor Authority Committee of CB2 Manhattan at the hearing May 26th, as testified by the chair of the committee, all of which together cast doubt on the reliability and truthfulness of the presentations of the application. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Seeing none, I'll note for the record that Bowery Alliance of Neighbors, Soho Alliance, and 10 individuals recommend denial.
Okay, thank you. Now, would you like to respond to any of the testimony?
I just wanted to respond that we tried to be very sensitive to the historic building. We're not changing any of the historic facades of the building. We're putting in this stairway in the rear wall as rear yard light well, because by putting it here, we don't have to make structural interventions into the building as it exists, which is much preferred. The structure of the stairway is lightweight steel as opposed to masonry, and the enclosing walls are not masonry, but made of lightweight rock wall panels. So our approach really was actually to be sensitive to the building and retain as much of the historic character as possible.
Okay, Commissioner Ginsburg.
So just a few questions for you to address. Why do you need the stair? Is there a club on the upper floors that needs it for egress?
Well, all buildings in New York City require two means of egress. This building, as it existed, had one interior stair and a fire escape with a drop ladder. It doesn't even qualify as a commercial fire escape. So it really was deficient in its egress from the very start, which that's one of the reasons we're trying to do it. Our proposal now is to have a more modern type of office complex, which on the top floor has a restaurant, and the second floor will have a meeting hall so that we can accommodate the new use of office with remote learning and so forth, where people come in and meet, but more in larger.
I'd point out, not all buildings require two stairs, and if you were converting this to residential under the multiple dwelling law, the existing would probably meet the requirements, although that would more detail. The second question I have is, are you digging any new foundations to support this structure?
The structure of the stair is supported by 2-foot thick footings that are poured basically at the level of the existing floor of the
So you
tunnel.
won't be doing any excavation?
No, we're not excavating to any of the adjacent buildings' footings or the footings of the building.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Master.
We heard a lot of testimony today that was a little bit concerned about the construction and how it would affect, the adjacent buildings. Can you address some of their concerns?
Well, we're not affecting the adjacent buildings at all. Our enclosure in the rear yard is kept an inch away from adjacent buildings, so that we're not touching them. And the structure of the stair is self-supporting. It only has one attachment to the existing building on every floor, like a scaffolding is to give it stability. So we're not affecting any of the adjacent buildings. I understand that they have concerns, and we have concerns also, so that we're doing everything to stay away from them. And, you know, impacting them also. We're not doing any of that.
Commissioners, any other questions? No, sorry, time for testimony is passed. Okay. Okay, great. So if there are no final questions from the commissioners, let's close the hearing and start the discussion. Vice Chair Master, will you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Ginsburg, will you second it?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. And I just want to start by thanking people for their testimony. We appreciate you coming here and sharing your concerns. I do want to clarify that what is before us today is the proposed work and making sure that it's appropriate to the historic building in the district. So issues of use or change in use or occupancy aren't under our jurisdiction and just aren't something that we can consider in this application. So we're really just looking at this application to infill a small courtyard at the rear of the rear corner of the lot, which is boxed in by neighboring buildings and is not visible from any public thoroughfares. Commissioner Wilder, will you start the discussion, please?
Yeah, definitely thanks for all of the testimony to give us more insight of what's happening. Definitely something to think about, but as at this and its appropriateness landmark standpoint. Appropriate, none of the
Okay, Commissioner Mann.
Yeah, public engagement is very, very important in this process. So I thank everyone, for their time and testimony. That being said, what's under our jurisdiction appears to be pretty straightforward. There is no visibility. Full lot coverage buildings are fairly typical in this district. The stair will not touch adjacent buildings, and in fact, its attachment to the subject site is minimal as well. So I think that, under our purview, this is appropriate.
Commissioner Goldblum.
I agree, it's appropriate.
Commissioner Jefferson? And Commissioner Kembe?
As what was stated by the other commissioners, I find it appropriate as well.
Commissioner Ginsburg?
Appropriate.
Vice Chair Master?
Appropriate.
Okay, Commissioner Wilder, could you please read the motion?
Matter of LPC -26-10153, 427 Broadway, Soho Cast Iron Historic District, a Venetian Renaissance style warehouse building with French Renaissance style detail designed by Thomas Jackson and built in 1870. Application is to construct. Addition, I note that the building's style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Soho Cast Iron Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the addition and the stair bulkhead enclosure will not be visible from any public thoroughfare. That full lot buildings are typical within the historic district. Therefore, filling the rear courtyard with a full height enclosure will be consistent with this established condition and will not overwhelm the building. That no historic fire shutters remain within the rear courtyard. Therefore, enclosing the utilitarian rear facades and the remaining fire shutter pencils will not detract from the building. That enclosing the egress stairs in the rear courtyard is required to comply with Department of Building Safety Code, and that the work will not detract from any from the special architectural historic character of the building or the historical district.
Commissioner Ginsburg, could you second the motion?
Second.
And Mark, can you call the vote?
Director Savage,
Aye.
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Quimby,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson, Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilder.
Aye.
With 8 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Please continue to work with staff, and let's move to the next item.
Next item is public hearing item number 3, LPC 26-11301, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 437, Lot 25, 288 East 10th Street. This is the St. Nicholas of Myra Orthodox Church, individual landmark, a Gothic and Renaissance Revival style church building designed by James Renwick Jr. and built in 1882 to 83. And the application is to replace windows.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Roberto Ciliberto, LPC staff. The project I'm presenting today is for work at the school portion of the St. Nicholas of Myra Orthodox Church complex. The building is an individual landmark located at the corner of East 10th Street and Avenue A in the East Village. At time of designation, all the windows of the school were aluminum replacement sashes set inside the original master frames, while leaving the decorative stained glass lancet transom about in place. These sashes have now reached their lifespan and need to be replaced. The proposal is to replace in kind 20 double hung aluminum units in total, 11 on Avenue A on the left and 6 on East 10th Street on the right. All the windows will be installed inside the master frame. The original brick molds and transom bars were capped with aluminum panning before designation and will remain untouched. As we see from this closed up, the units will be installed inside the master frames without touching the historic brick molds behind the panning. Some windows at the top floor dormers include panning in front of the lancet stained glass as well. This work was performed long before designation, and current conditions don't allow inspection of the transom window. Interior soffits have been dropped and sealed and can be opened to assess the presence of the original window behind. The scope is to operate inside a master frame by removing the existing replacement windows assembly and installing new to match without changing the configuration or operation of the sashes. And the applicant is here to respond to any of your questions.
Would the applicant like to say anything or just respond to questions?
Yes. Okay. Sorry, my mistake. The existing windows now, the sashes, replacement sashes, are actually not aluminum right now. They're vinyl, and they're to be replaced in aluminum instead.
Okay. Okay, then we'll move to questions. Commissioner Ginsburg?
There's metal over the panning.
Yes.
As part of this work, why can't that be removed and the original brick mold exposed?
So various options have been considered during the process of this application. One was to remove the panning and expose the original wood brick mold and decorative transom bar, but that will require the installation of a full scaffold system, which is too expensive for the church now to afford. Another option was to replace the existing panning with a new extruded aluminum panning to match the same decorative elements, but that caused the same problem in expenses.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. Let's move to testimony. Is there anybody in the room that would like to testify on this item? Okay, not seeing anybody. Let's move to Zoom with Elizabeth Lee.
Those joining via Zoom who wish to speak, please use the raise hand function. You'll be promoted to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute, state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. The first speaker will be Jeremy Woodoff.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jeremy Woodoff for the Victorian Society, New York. 2 issues need to be addressed. the material of the new windows, and their configuration. For this individual landmark, new sash material should be wood, and the aluminum paneling covering the brick molds should be removed. At the third floor, it appears that the transoms in the pointed arches have been covered with sheet metal. However, these windows did not originally have transoms, as is apparent in the tax photo taken for the neighboring building. See our written testimony for this image. It would not be appropriate to replace these sash in kind. The correct configuration is 1/1 with a pointed arch upper sash. There should be no transom, either glazed or covered over, at the third floor windows. This opportunity to begin to return the windows on this individual landmark to their historic condition should not be lost. Thank you.
Anyone else who wishes to speak, please use the raise hand function. Seeing none, note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 3 recommends approval.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to respond to any of the testimony?
I can respond on
Oh,
the Lancet at the third floor.
Okay.
So the two dormers that present now the panning at the top section of the opening. In the interior side, the soffit has been dropped and possibly some kind of duct has been installed at that point. The problem is that in order for us to inspect behind the panning, an extensive interior alteration should be performed. And this is something that the church at this time cannot do, reason why they are just planning on replacing what is there without having to modify the existing conditions. The proposal is to do this in the master frame, just not to touch the historic fabric.
Thank you. Commissioner Mahan, question?
I have a question for staff. If this is, I understand this is not, as I understand, this is not restoring to, kind of original or historic condition, but if this is truly 1-for-1 replacement in kind, why are, it's almost like maintenance in a way. Why are we seeing it?
Yeah, the staff rules don't make that sort of distinction. I think in the past, they may have allowed for such things, but as it is today, it anticipates either a full window replacement or maybe insert windows or sashes within the frame to remain. But nonetheless, they do call for in this case, the materials to be matched. It's an individual landmark. Okay. So the historic material was wood. So there's, again, asking for a substitute material. I think we heard the existing ones are vinyl. They're asking for metal now. And, the fact that they're not touching the rest of the panning around the perimeter or these other conditions that are an original, again, the staff rules don't really account for those types of sort of halfway measures.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. I think Corey just explained in detail like why we're reviewing this. So Commissioner Jefferson, would you like to, oh, you're correct. You're correct. Let's go ahead and close the hearing before we start our discussion. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make a motion?
So moved.
And Commissioner Wilder, will you second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. And Commissioner Jefferson, could you start?
Well, presented within the limits of what they can do. Set the limits.
Agreed.
Commissioner Mann?
I concur.
Commissioner Wilder?
Appropriate.
Vice Chair Master?
Appropriate.
Ginsburg? Commissioner
I just want to add appropriate with the understanding that when the panning needs to be replaced, the brick mold is exposed and repaired and if needed, replaced in kind.
Commissioner Quimby? Okay, Commissioner Jefferson, could you please read the motion?
Sure. In the matter of LPC-26, 11301 288 East 10th Street, St. Nicholas of Myra Orthodox Church. Visual landmarks. Applications to replace windows. Recommend approval with modifications, finding that the existing panning were installed. Insert windows. For existing panning to remain. That the new windows will match it. Special architectural and historic character of the building. However, find that the existing panning over the brickwork, which does not replicate the historic profile or details, therefore need to be replaced.
I think it's, it was discussed at the end that in the future, should they sort of do any alterations to the perimeter panning, that at that time they would either expose the underlying brick mold or match that. But in terms of what we're looking at today, I think it's just approved as
In the
is.
future, if you're going to do repairs on the windows, think about replacing the panning in historic panning.
Second.
Corey, can you read the vote, please?
Sure. Chair Savage?
Aye.
Vice Chair Master?
Aye.
Commissioner Chin is out. Commissioner Chu is out. Commissioner Ginsburg?
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum? Commissioner Quimby?
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson?
Aye.
Commissioner Mahan?
Aye.
And Commissioner Wilder?
Aye.
Okay, 7 to 0. This is approved. We'll move to the next item.
Thank you very much. Please continue to work with staff.
Sorry, got put on the spot there. I'll do better next time. Let me get ready to read the next one. Yeah, all right. The next item is public hearing item number 4, LPC 26-09292, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1259, Lot 34, 500 Fifth Avenue, the 500 Fifth Avenue Building Individual Landmark, an Art Deco style skyscraper designed by Shreve, Harmon, and Lamb and built in 1929 to 31. And the application is to paint bas-relief stone carvings.
Good afternoon. My name is David Placha from LB Architects, and I'm here to discuss the approval for 500 Fifth Avenue's decorative relief carvings to be painted at the south facade on 42nd Street. There's a pair on the South Avenue, south side of the building on 42nd Street, where currently they are not painted, and the intent is to match the finish, to match the 500 Fifth Avenue side entrance to create a unified ornament look and intent. These were the intent is to match the prominent Art Deco style decorative.
David, if you could just pause for a moment, if you can click on your screen, you'll be able to advance the slides to show the presentation.
Click on the screen. I apologize.
And then you can use, yes, to advance the slides to illustrate what you're discussing. Thank you.
I apologize. So as you can see on this first sheet in the section, item number 2 in the middle, that is the current existing state of the 42nd Street side eagles, with the pair of eagles and the 505th ornament. On the left side is the decorative condition that we have that we intend to match with the gilded color Those have eagles as well and other decorative elements. We have here as well the paint master fit satin brass finish that will be of matching of what we have currently and what was used in a previous application as well. And as you can see, this is a rendering from the historical images that we were able to collect previously that shows the intent is of historical connection. And here's another view of what is currently on the left side is the 42nd Street's facade, where the reliefs are currently existing, and on the right is what we hope it will look like as if we are to get this approved. And for the most part, and when we had our hearing, we talked about this intent and how it matches other buildings of the Art Deco style throughout the city, specifically in Empire State and as well as 500 Fifth Avenue. So we wish to follow the similar suit and have this continuing ornament scheme in the south end to unify with the other side of our building. And here's some close-ups of the existing condition on 500 Fifth, where we would use the same color to match. And that's it for me presenting. Thank you.
Commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant? Okay, not seeing any. Let's go ahead and move to testimony. Is there anybody in the room that would like to testify on this? Okay, not seeing anybody in the room. We'll move to Elizabeth Lee for Zoom testimony.
Those joining via Zoom who wish to speak, please use the raise hand function. You'll be promoted to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute, state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. The first speaker will be Jeremy Woodoff.
Good afternoon again, Commissioners. Jeremy Woodoff for the Victorian Society, New York. The first order of business in reviewing this application is to clarify the terms the applicant is using. Gilding, gold paint, and gold leaf are used interchangeably in the presentation. Gilding is a generic term that means giving something a gold color. Gold paint and gold leaf are two entirely different things. They are different materials, they are applied differently, they look different, and they age differently. At different points in the presentation, the existing gold on the east front of the building is referred to as gilding, gold leaf, and gold paint. We think picking out certain facade details in gold on buildings such as this is often appropriate. We have no objection to that treatment here. However, only real gold leaf should be used. Gold paint looks like paint. It's a cheap substitute for the real thing and is not appropriate on this individual landmark. Gold paint is made of bronze or mica flakes and not gold, and is cheap to apply as anyone can brush it on. Gold leaf is made of real gold and requires a skilled technician to apply it. But there are many examples of real gold leaf used on exterior stone and metal surfaces in the city. It isn't a lost art and is the appropriate solution here. Thank you.
Anyone else who wishes to speak, please use the raise hand function. The next speaker will be the Historic Districts Council.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Manur Fatima. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. The Historic Districts Council would like to note that gold leaf and gold paint should not be considered interchangeable, as the Victorian Society said, and they have different effects as they age. We do not object to the gold detailing, but it may be a better alternative to use gold leaf. The application notes that there is existing gold leaf on the east elevation, and the same treatment for the front would create a more cohesive look for for the building that's going to last longer. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Seeing none, a note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 5 recommends approval.
Okay, thank you. Would the applicant like to respond to any of the testimony?
We understand the concern with using gold leaf versus paint, and we will take that into account for this proposal to do the gold leaf.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg, question?
Yes, the rendering on, what is it? The page isn't numbered, but the rendering that shows gold leaf seems to be of the Fifth Avenue side, not the 42nd Street side, and also seems to be done in the 60s or 70s, not when the building was designed. Can you confirm or let me know what's up?
I cannot confirm that.
So you don't know which elevation it is?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were asking if it was in the 60s done. And the gold in the rendering here in this image is from the Fifth Avenue side.
Okay, and then you have no idea when the rendering was done?
That is correct.
But it clearly wasn't done when the building was built.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Jefferson?
Was gold leaf on the Fifth Avenue facade and not on the 40?
Per what we can recollect, on the Fifth Avenue side is done with gold. And on the south facade on 42nd, it is not done right now. It's currently just a stone relief. As you can see, yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any, let's close the hearing and start the discussion. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Vice Chair Master, will you second the motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The hearing is closed. So as we've heard, this is an application to paint bas-relief stone carvings, including the address and the carved eagles. While gilding was used elsewhere on the building at the primary entrance, it was not historically used at the location being proposed or at this height on the facade. So today we need to consider this work and whether it is appropriate to these features and this building. Commissioner Goldblum, would you start the discussion?
Thanks. Gilding's having a bit of a moment these days. Not sure that's a good thing. I think here the text would be fine to pick out, but I'm a little bit concerned about the eagles being a little over the top. So I would support the text, but not the eagles. And I think that the testimonies raise a very valid point about the use of gilding, and the applicant's expression that that would be acceptable to them, I think, is something that we should validate.
Commissioner Mahan?
I concur completely.
Commissioner Wilder?
I agree.
Vice Chair Master?
Yes, I agree with Commissioner Goldblum.
Commissioner Ginsburg?
I agree. I just want to make sure that what we're asking for is gold leaf and not gold paint.
Commissioner Quimby?
I agree with the gold leaf.
Okay, and Commissioner Jefferson?
I agree with.
With the gold leaf. Okay. Commissioner Goldblum, could you read that motion with that?
Sure. Regarding 500 Fifth Avenue, the 500 Fifth Avenue building, the application is to paint or to bas-relief stone carvings. I recommend approval with modifications, noting that the entryways and addresses at buildings of this age and style were often marked with changes of materials, such as stone, metal, and sometimes gilding. That the proposed limited use of gold in the incised address is in keeping with that precedent and will not detract from the individual landmark. However, I would propose that the applicant only apply gold leaf to the text 500 Fifth Avenue and not to the eagles.
Commissioner Jefferson, will you second the motion? And Mark, can you call the vote?
Chair Savage,
Aye.
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Equimbe,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Mahan,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilder. With 8 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
Okay, that has been approved in part or with modifications, so please continue to work with the staff member. And let's move to the next item.
Next item is public hearing item number 5, LPC 26-09323. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 891, Lot 71, 134 East 36th Street in the Murray Hill Historic District Extension. This is the second Empire-style row house designed by George J. Hamilton and Thomas Kilpatrick and built circa 1863 to 64. And the application is to alter the side facade and install rooftop guardrails.
Good afternoon. My name is Wojciech Oktawiec. I'm an architect with PAF Architecture, and I will be presenting a renovation of the building. We focusing located in 134 East 36th Street, which is the corner location, because building is the address refers to East 36th Street, but also faces Lexington Avenue. We are somehow asking for approval of 2 elements before commission. One is the renovation of the Lexington Avenue and resurfacing it with the brownstone. I will try to make my case and explain the situation. And the second, it is relocation of existing railing on the roof to the little bit closer to the edge location to make the room. Okay, I'm sorry. I stopped advancing the slides. Okay, so that's here we are, 134 East Street, the corner location, and we asking about 2 items: resurfacing, recoating the existing Lexington facade, which is right now coated brick with the brownstone finish, and relocation of the existing railing to the new location, approximately 2 feet from the edge. The slides 2 shows location within the Manhattan. Of course, the states what I just said about those 2 items being in the front of commission for review. The plot plan, then we have the when the building is located within the Murray Hill Historic District. The district was designated in 2003-2004 with extension and without there is also the block location. So of course I studied the historic photos and received the photos both from the Landmark Commission kind of designation, also from the municipal archives, the historic photo 1940, which shows how the actual corner building looks like, and even in relation to the neighboring building, historic photo 1980, and existing facade. We also doing extensive restoration work to the, I'm just mentioning them because we just asking for hearing and for review of those 2 elements I mentioned, but we're also doing restoration of the mansard roof, replacing the existing deteriorated, quite horrible corrugated metal roof. We're going back to historic pattern with the shingle, the slate shingle. Those are designation photos from 2004 when the building was designated as a Murray Hill Historic District. Then existing photos, because a part of restoration is also replacement of roofing. When we put new liquid roofing to the lower and upper roof in this building. Here, this prominent facade at Lexington Avenue and rear facade. I have to mention of this is not a subject of this hearing, but the idea of recoating with the brownstone originated somehow 1.5 years ago when my client, who is with our Sławomir Plata, purchased this building. We had to really rescue this building. And two weeks after the purchasing, the building department somehow came and did the emergency order, and we have to really stabilize this building. We, at the time, it was hired a structural engineer, and we worked with him, and we somehow installed those anchors with the wrought iron anchors with the stars to the building, but it still have a certain elements of uneven. So all the backlink was and building was to the degree not completely eliminated and stabilized the building. But at the time we thought that probably we need a second phase, and idea was to resurface to really somehow better protect this building for the weather condition, existing elevation and proposed elevation. When thinking about the resurfacing, we're taking all the cues from the front elevation, carries the line, coursing the same, despite, of course, applying new surface and due to a certain evenness. It is around 2 inches, sometimes a little bit less, sometimes 2 inches and 1/4 inch with finish coat and scratch coat, but we carrying all the historic lines from the front elevation to the side elevation, and additionally creating some kind of coin as an allusion to typical historic treatment of the corner. This slide it's really show existing elevation and the rendering of the proposed elevation, making this to the kind of unified, cohesive, and significant corner. I will show some precedents from the Murray Hill that it is interesting pattern along the Lexington Avenue. That East 38th Street is this building, East 37th Street is building who has both stucco cover elevation the same on East 38th Street. We develop all the details. I work with today with us is installer from Define Construction, Mr. Rubel, who works on the building which we've been renovating, 119 East 38th Street, and together with him I work on the details how to somehow deal with the unevenness of elevation and all the conditions I'm showing here on the elevation of Lexington Avenue, those details, A, B, C, D, like vertically, and the typical windows, how we resurface and apply the finish on the bottom of the basement level, on the top, on the typical between 1 and the 3rd floor, and when we meet the mansard roof, which we'll be renovating and bringing back to this historic material slate. And the same in each window, double window, the most significant element of this elevation, how we deal with this, the typical window, which varies in height, but the treatment of brackets and surrounds is the same, and we will be recreating even when putting this new surface, which will cover the existing stars, Rhode Island stars, and protect the elevation. And in the lower level, basement level, okay, ground level, we're bringing pattern from the front elevation with this coursing and horizontal lines. Here are the coins at the corner and how we're meeting with the rear elevations. When thinking about the railing, this roof plan shows the existing dashed line, which with existing railing. There is no record of by the way, of when it was installed, but we want to relocate this a little bit closer to make for owner a little bit bigger this roof for the also future relocation and make it less visible HVAC units, which are right now on the lower roof over the one-story part at Lexington Avenue. We created a mock-up, which is even when I'm speaking those words in the on the side, showing how with location on the corner of this building, and the diagram shows this 2-foot offset and the typical guard lay height 42 inches. Then the sidelines, like I mentioned, it's a prominent corner with a visibility from both sides of Lexington Avenue. And how this relates, again, bringing the photo of the corner with the existing and rendering, partially as done by AI, but only partially. And that's all. We have also appendix, which I guess I cannot access, right? You don't go.
Yeah.
So maybe I mentioned already about those precedents in the East 37th Street, Lexington, East 38, and there is also precedents which, because I am fully aware about the rules of landmark, and when covering the brick that 54 Greene Avenue in Brooklyn, which was under commission around a year ago, was approved. A little bit different circumstances, but there was this stucco finish over historic brick approved. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And questions, Commissioner Goldblum?
You're going to all this trouble to make this building nicer. Why not put the cornice back?
Would you please repeat? I'm sorry.
Did you consider putting the cornice back?
Yes, it was. We have the owner, Sławomir Plata, with us. For now, we decided, because of budgetary reason, not to put. But yes, I would love to put the cornice back. But it will be the next phase. We're doing those projects in phases, like I explained. We already renovated the entry foyer in this building. Now we want to do the facade, and maybe we'll get to the corner also, depending of the budget for the project.
Okay, Commissioner Ginsburg?
So the existing, I guess it's 36th Street facade,
yes,
looks pretty good in the photos. Why are you coating it with a thick substance?
You're talking about Lexington Avenue facade, because this is the one which I'm covering.
But aren't you, what are you doing? You're covering the stars on
the deteriorated Lexington facade, which we stabilize and which still have a deterioration, cracks and all that we want to do. The actual front facade, as historically was done on East 36th Street, we're leaving intact. We're taking the cues, the actual lines and carrying to the Lexington facade. Maybe I don't know if I can go back to the, but yeah, to this photo which shows you the existing and the proposed. So the front facade stays exactly the same like it is. Yes, we didn't get coins because we. It's like I say, it has a certain elements of buckling still. through there. This is why I wanted to somehow enter appendix, which I was showing you the sections from the monitoring, because we did laser monitoring of this facade during stabilization every day horizontally and thing, and had the section showing the actual geometry. You can
Just go past that.
Oh,
While we're
yeah,
doing,
that was, I'm sorry for this, so the appendix. So here you have this facade stabilization and the section showing the geometry in this facade with all this section given. It was, of course, permitted and done. I think that one of the reasons that we had to do all the stabilization was that there was restoration done in 2016, and they removed the anchors of replaced beams, wood to the light joints, and we have to put all these anchors with the stars. I mean, those are technical issue, but I wanted to point to this precedence, the 50th Greenie approved by the commission, and the two, when I mentioned, like along the Lexington Avenue, that East 38, our 36, 134 East building, then East 37 and East 38. There were some photos of on the roof that we want to have a little bit more room for HVAC, and the actual installer regarding the thicknesses. So I'll go back to the view, because I think this is. Yep.
Yeah, related question, the stars that are on that facade now, so I understand that those have a turnbuckle or bar inside to stabilize the wall.
Yes.
You're not taking them off, you're covering them.
That's correct. I'm just covering with the new brownstone finish.
How long have they been there for?
Year and a half. We, like I mentioned, my client purchased this building in, let's say, November 2024. We did stabilization work in the first months of the January, February, and March of.
So they're not historic.
They're not historic.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Just a technical question. Go back to your wall section. Lexington Avenue. Where you're putting in a thicker stucco, are you using mesh?
No, with us, there is the Mr. Rubel. I had a numerous discussion with him, and he has 25 years experience, and he's one of contractors which is registered. He advised me not to use mesh. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Kwambe.
Yes, and we're redoing this exactly. I mean, we replicated them. This is why I develop all these details existing with the exact the same dimension. I will maybe I'll go back to the details. So every window, everything, it will be replicated.
And you're sure with the varying depths that are shown, because it's not consistent around. It changes depending on what obstruction you hit. But the coating itself it's going to be cohesive, and it's going to connect properly to the substrate as well.
Yes, yes, that's what I've been working. That's why I usually have a method to working with manufacturer installers as an architect, not for when developing certain technical details, and to verify. And we still will submit the technical drawings to you, because this is just the hearing for the.
Okay, do we have Commissioner Jefferson?
So the shadow lines are going to change, right? Because
yes,
okay,
it will be
everything will be decreased or by at least 3/4 of an inch, no?
The shadow lines for the surrounds and brackets and all will be the same. the actual glazing will be 2 inches more offsetted because of the coating, which we.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any, let's go ahead and move to testimony. Is there anybody in this room that would like to speak on this item? Okay, not seeing anybody. Let's move to Zoom with Elizabeth Lee.
Those joining via Zoom who wish to speak, please use the raise hand function. You'll be promoted to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute, state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. The first speaker will be the Historic Districts Council.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Manu Fatima. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. The Historic Districts Council believes that the only appropriate component of this application is roof slating, while the other designs will not help the building. We believe that the brownstone sidewall is inappropriate, as is the idea of covering the steel anchors with stucco, as these interventions do not address the structural problems of the building. The star anchors will most likely need to be replaced in the future, and the brick needs to be cleaned, the current brick. It's also noteworthy that the applicant is not restoring the cornice, which would tie the design together and harken back to the building's original design. Overall, this project is not well thought out in terms of its restoration. Thank you.
The next speaker will be John Graham.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Graham for the Victorian Society in New York. This Second Empire-style corner row house is one of a group of 3 erected by developers George Hamilton and Thomas Kilpatrick circa 1863-64. Of this group, 134 East 36 is the best preserved and retains the most original architectural details. We appreciate the proposed Vermont slate shingles at the mansard roof and relocation of the gutter downspout from the Lexington Avenue facade to the rear of the building. We have concerns about the proposed brownstone look stucco finish of the Lexington Avenue facade. First, the brick cladding on the Lexington Avenue side elevation is typical for a speculative row house of this period, with brownstone cladding on the front facade. Most immediately, this can be seen directly across the street at the corner row house at 135 East 36th Street. We believe this original brick cladding should be retained as a representative architectural characteristic of a row house from this period. Second, the addition of non-original corner quoins muddy this building's surviving architectural details. Third, we have concerns about cracking of the brownstone look stucco material where it covers the wrought iron stabilizer plates caused by differential expansion and contraction of the 2 materials. Refer to detail C on sheet LPC 13. Additionally, we see no reason to cover over the star design wrought iron stabilizer plates. Finally, upon viewing the 1940 tax photo, we feel an opportunity is being missed in not replicating the original cornice that once wrapped both East 36th Street and Lexington Avenue facades. This element not only unified the 2 facades of different cladding materials, but also was a correctly proportioned architectural feature celebrating the transition between the exterior walls and the sloping mansard roof above. Thank you, Commissioners.
Anyone else who wishes to speak, please use the raise hand function. Seeing none, a note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 6 and Murray Hill Neighborhood Association recommends approval.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to respond to any of the testimony?
Sure. So maybe I will start with the process that of course, we went through the public hearings, and we also received a letter for the Murray Hill Neighboring Association with support of the project, the same with the hearing with the community board. When thinking about technical issues of recovering, resurfacing due to this unevenness of the facade and what what we already did, because I personally was like selecting those iron stars and found them in manufacturing in Philadelphia. So, but I always treated this as a kind of temporary. I thought from the architect. I'm also the teacher. I teach architecture in New York Institute of Technology. So yes, I agree that it is a historic facade, how it originated in 1864 as a tract house. There was 3 houses, 2 were practically destroyed. One is left, the corner one. But I don't think that we're doing any harm to this building. Quite opposite. I think that it will not crack. I mean, I've been working with manufacturers, studied having a structural engineer, and maybe we will bring still. I mean, we have, if the owner can make any statement regarding the cornice, if you will be willing to rebuild it. Would you please? Yeah, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Slavek Plata. I'm the owner, and I just wanted to bring the history of what happened after the purchase of this building. This building was renovated before I purchased it. Unfortunately, the renovation, interior renovation, weakened the exterior wall on Lexington Avenue. And shortly after, weeks after I have purchased this for me and my family to live there, we received a call from DOB Emergency Services that we have 24 hours or 48 hours to put a sidewalk shed to protect the public from falling wall. It was that bad. And we had only limited time to find contractor who will put the sidewalk shed and then actual installation of perform the installation of the iron rods inside the building, connecting the wall to the C-joists that are going for the building. They were not connected. But the DOB services were basically contemplating removing the entire historic wall because it's so weakened. It's 160 years old building, beautiful building, and I love history. I come from Poland myself. We respect and value history. That's why I purchased this building, to maintain what it shows, not to damage this or change this. But at the same time, when I'm faced with emergency repairs of this magnitude and DOB contemplating whether I should completely remove this wall and rebuild it. Obviously, it's not historic anymore then. Or put the iron rods and stars outside of the building just to stabilize the building with monitoring system outside. We came up with the idea that instead of removing in the future, when they come back and tell me, okay, now you have to replace this wall, instead of doing this and allowing the brick to deteriorate even more, if you walk by this building, you will see that the brick pretty much dissipates. It's like sand. And unfortunately, it will not change over time. It will just keep going. And maybe 10 years, maybe 5 years from now, I'm probably going to get this call from DOB saying, now rebuild the wall. So instead of doing this, since we stabilized the wall pursuant to DOB directives, Wojtek came up with the idea that it will be better to just cover the brick, existing historic brick, don't change the historic structure of the building, and just prevent any atmospheric conditions to get to this brick. And this was sort of like an ideal solution for DOB as well, I think. That's why CB6 voted yes. That's why Historic Association of Moray Hill voted yes. And they love the idea because it preserves the interior historic structure of the building. And again, for me, this is why I purchased this building. I wanted this to be historic. I didn't want to change the structure, and I didn't want to change the surface of the building. But I know that in a couple of years, we will face a situation that those stars will no longer support. If we let the bricks and the mortar erode more and more and more, there will be no wall, no historic wall in the coming years. So before that happens, we decided, let's do this project. Let's present this to commissioners, what we can do before that happens, and see if that makes sense to you. Again, as a homeowner, it wasn't fun to buy a building that has to be completely ripped inside, all the ceilings were ripped just to connect the C-joists to the exterior wall. It just looks like stars, but really inside the building, it was inhabitable. Everything was ripped. It was a brand new construction. It had to be completely redone. And it was a nightmare. It was just a nightmare. But at the same time, we stabilized it. We did exactly what DOB told us to do. And now we are here asking for mercy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg, final questions. Or I'm sorry, Commissioner Goldblum, I'm sorry.
Okay. So, you didn't answer your architect's question about whether you'd consider the cornice.
Oh, yes. If this is what would make this project go forward, if we can assume that, I have no problem with putting this back.
Great.
Because this is historic. That's something that.
Question though?
Sure.
And I might have missed it. I apologize if I did. The deterioration of the brick was caused by what? By the movement of the building?
It's hard to judge, I would say, by the neglect of previous owners.
Brick doesn't usually fail because of neglect. I mean.
No. Okay, now I will answer correct. I did the forensic investigation. In 2016, there was the renovation done. They replaced existing wood joists, which has the ties to the brick with light weight joists.
Right.
And they remove
Well,
all,
that caused the building to move.
They took all the anchors. The rest was atmospheric. We're living in the time we have tow and freeze. We know that how little bit you might believe or know that climate changes with during the winter, the tow and freeze.
So
elements.
now that the building is stabilized, why would you expect the brick to continue deteriorating?
There are still cracks on the way, even in your destination photo. When you look at the actual facade, they are visible.
Cracks that probably started with the movement?
It's hard to say. I only can say look at 20 years ago or to whatever is accessible. That it was a constant deterioration. I mean, if I try to think about this building, so this was a typical building, which is a row house, and always is a kind of drama, which this elevation to the degree expresses when it's becoming the last corner building, because all the punching the openings comes from the inside. Normally they don't, so they have the bathrooms and they punching the openings. Even architects in 1864, the bathrooms and two rooms, and there was one bigger opening. I mean, in comparison, because I really walk this neighborhood.
Thank you. Can I just ask staff a question about this? Did they determine that the cause of did they agree that the brick is going to continue to deteriorate? Because, now that the structure is stabilized, is it apparent, like for instance, is the face brick spalling, or is it just cracks that probably related to structural movement?
I mean, maybe the staff can give a little more detail. I mean, I think you can observe on site there is stepped cracking localized in at least one location. I think there's evidence of spalling, which may suggest the coating that's on the brick now and has been on for a very long time. I think even maybe going back to the tax photo has caused damage to the surface of the brick. So I think it's quite possible. So that could be arrested and potentially strengthened or further stabilized with the coating if that doesn't in turn let moisture in and cause its own issues. So that's a bit of an unknown perhaps. But that's what they're going for.
Okay, any other questions? Commissioner Ginsburg, do you have a question? No. Okay. So let's close the hearing and start the discussion. Commissioner Jefferson, will you make a motion to close the hearing?
No.
Commissioner Goldblum, sorry, will you second the motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. So just quickly, I want to note that the commission, as we've heard, had previously approved emergency stabilization work here in 2025 at this building, including the anchors that are visible on the side facade. And the application today is to resurface that facade with stucco to cover the anchors and deal with irregularities of the compromised brick facade. which the staff rules don't allow because it is a change in material from the original condition. And the application is also to install rooftop guardrails. Commissioner Ginsburg, could you please lead the discussion?
So let me just go through these. I think the guardrails are fine. I think the roofing is fine. That may even be reviewed at staff level. And the windows seem to be fine, so that's all easy. I can live with the stucco coating. I want to make sure that it will be stable and particularly over the stars, that there isn't movement that causes cracking, et cetera, because I'd hate you to go to all this effort and then in a few years have to be repairing it. I don't think you should do the coins because the original building, although the stucco is going over the brick, it's keeping the same color, but the original building was designed, had the pattern on the side street and on Lexington was basically a smooth brown facade. And I find the coins are gussying it up a bit. There is no requirement now or need to do the cornice. We'd love to see you do that at some point, but that isn't under discussion now. And so I think working with staff on the stucco, and I'll be curious what my fellow commissioners think, but I would say no to the coins.
Commissioner Quimby.
As it comes to the refinishing of the I believe it's the Lexington wall, I'd like to see a little more refinement and detailing just to ensure that it's going to hold and also works in conjunction with the existing ties. I would also potentially rethink the coins that are planned at the corner. I'd like to see that detailing of those two surfaces coming together as well. And I guess lastly, I would actually enjoy the cornice coming back, but that's something to be decided.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Jefferson?
I think this project is appropriate. I'm just concerned about the thickness of the stucco, because typically there's a mesh put in just to keep it adhering, and it's not here. And it's going over metal that could expand. So I'm technically I'm concerned about that, but everything else I think is fine.
Commissioner Goldblum?
I share that technical concern. It doesn't make any sense to me that you would apply a thin coat over a different material like steel and expect that that it was going to move. So I think that the applicant has to work with the staff on determining what the condition is, B, what the proper installation system is, and I mean, I think doing a mock-up wouldn't really show you very much because it's really about season passing and seeing how it plays out. But, maybe we should talk to our structural consultant, might have some ideas about this, or I don't know exactly how to do it, but I think that technically this needs to be proved out. But I do think that the cornice, which the owner generously offered to do, would help this by making it more historically accurate overall, even though we are reducing the accuracy of it by changing the brick to another material. I think that would be a good thing to do, and it would be, we'd be taking him up on his offer.
Commissioner Mahan?
I concur with Commissioner Goldblum.
Commissioner Wilder?
Yeah, I'm concerned as well with just the technical aspect of the stucco, especially without the wire mesh, as well as around the window trim and details. I too would like to take the applicant up on his offer for the cornice. I think the railing is okay. And yeah, that's, I think that's.
Vice Chair Master?
Yeah, I think that the railing is fine. And I think that the stucco could be appropriate, but I think that you have to work with staff, and, you know, work out the details and technical specifications, et cetera.
I think we heard two commissioners bring up the coins. Is that correct? Oh, three. Okay, so
I'll have to work with staff too.
yeah, work with staff. And, you know, I think in terms of the cornice, it would be most appropriate to say, we would encourage the applicant to consider that in the future.
Gotcha. Should I
Yes,
go ahead?
I'm sorry. So yes, if you could read the motion, I apologize.
No, that's fine. I broke the rhythm there. With regards to LPC 26-09-323, 134 East 36th Street, Murray Hill Historic District Extension, a second Empire-style row house designed by George J. Hamilton and Thomas Kilpatrick and built circa 1863, 1864. Application is to alter the side facade and install rooftop guardrails. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details were among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Murray Hill Historic District. I further note that the side facade recently became unstable, pulling away from the structure, and was repaired with structural tieback pursuant to LPC approval. I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the proposed installation of stucco cladding on the damaged brick facade will obscure existing structural tiebacks and unsympathetic facade alterations without eliminating or damaging any significant architectural features. That the presence and finish of the proposed stucco will recall the brownstone cladding sometimes found at side facades of brownstone fronted corner buildings of the age type and will be harmonious with the style, historic material, and finish palette of the row house. That the coined rustification scoring of the side facade may be in keeping with the historic features found at corner row houses of this style and age, and will help transition between the two facades without diminishing the historic primacy of the front facade or changing the overall character of the row house. That the presence and placement of the metal rooftop guardrail will be evocative of cresting historically found at mansard roofs of houses of this type, style, and age. And that the rooftop guardrail will be simply designed in terms of material, neutral and finish, and primarily seen against the backdrop of taller secondary facades, and will have a subordinate presence. However, I find that the stability and longevity of the unusually thick stucco cladding will not be documented or tested. Have questions about the appropriateness of the coins, and in the therefore the applicant should develop specification, construction details, and field mock-ups, working with staff to ensure the stability and longevity of the stucco finish in consultation with the staff. Should, in consultation with the staff, rethink the coins and encourage sometime in the future a cornice be added to replicate the historic cornice. Okay?
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Vice Chair Master, could you second that, please?
Second?
Okay, and Mark, can you please call the vote?
Chair Savage,
Aye.
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Quembe,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Mahan,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilder.
Aye.
With 8 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Please continue to work with staff.
I will. Thank you very much.
And we're going to move to the next item.
Right, and this is the last item of the day, public hearing item number 6, LPC 26-12819. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 1504, lot 47, 56 East 93rd Street, and 1307 to 1309 Madison Avenue, 56 East 93rd Street, formerly William Godby Low House Individual Landmark, also in the expanded Carnegie Hill Historic District. This is a neo-Regency style townhouse designed by Walker and Gillette and built in 1932, and 2 row houses designed by A.B. Ogden and Sons and built in 1880, and later altered in the neo-Georgian style by Moore and Landseidel in 1932. The application is to alter the Madison Avenue facades, construct rooftop and rear yard additions, and install rooftop mechanical equipment and plate cages, excavate the site, and replace storefronts.
Thank you. Yeah, please begin.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Shelley Friedman and Gottbaum, representing the trustees of the Spence School. Apologize for the temporary loss of voice here. I'm going to introduce briefly the presentation members and then provide a brief history of the Spence's applications at the Landmarks Commission. I will briefly turn this over to Felicia Wilkes, who is the head of the Spence School. She will be followed by Kimberly Kravis, who is the chair of the trustees of the Spence School. Sarah Grant will then provide the architectural presentation from MBB Architects. We have with us, but to answer your questions, should they arise, both of our structural engineers from Langen, Sam Singer, and from Plan B, Brandon Egelberger. Also on Zoom, following Brandon will be Eric Zellick, who is the Director of Teaching and Learning at Spence. I want to just briefly provide a history because it is complex and it is, to a certain extent, what we're saying here today is a continuation of the discussion that began in 2000. Spence bought the Low Mansion, an individual landmark, in 2000 with the intention of converting it to its lower school. At the time, the building was the Smithers Rehabilitation Clinic, long vacant and in very poor shape. The Spence School bought it to provide a home to its lower school, which was currently occupying its main building, the John Russell Pope Building on East 91st Street. The certificate of appropriateness for the alterations required for the Low Mansion were very clear and are, to a large extent, the foundational principle which governs our approach in this application. Because in that C of A, you instructed the applicant to do no work on the mansion then or in the future that would change its character as a residential freestanding mansion. And that should be the ongoing rule of the road for any future changes to the mansion. But we're here today to honor that commitment and to continue it. Part of this application calls for minor work on the mansion, but the more significant aspect of this application is that that the school was unable originally to bring all of the lower school over to the mansion. That's because while its original application to the Landmarks Commission called for an additional partial fifth and partial sixth floor, the commission approved a partial fifth floor only. And as a result, the school was unable to bring the entire lower school over. And from that point on into this day, the lower school through 4th grade is in the mansion, and the 5th grade of the lower school remains in the John Russell Pope building. So when the adjoining properties at 1305 and 07 Madison Avenue, which are the other 2 buildings that are part of this application, came to market, the school obviously wanted to take the opportunity to purchase those buildings. They can be connected to the mansion through the side yards and rear yards, and to, in a sense, catch up with a quarter century of programmatic expansion and changes that had occurred at the mansion but were unable to be accommodated by virtue of the fact that that there was not going to be any significant changes to the mansion, and we all understood that. So today's application for the two-row houses calls for their gut rehabilitation. The floors will be aligned so that they can connect back to the mansion at the mansion's side wall. And one story will be added to provide for additional classrooms that will complete all of the ambitions of Spence in finally, after a quarter century, bringing its lower school back together in the mansion, and will provide for significant programmatic upgrades. And you will be hearing that from the rest of the speakers. So that's the synopsis of the long journey to this podium once again. And I now would like to turn it over to Felicia Wilkes, who is the head of school.
Thank you, Shelley. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Felicia Wilkes, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to present our plans to you today. As Shelley mentioned, Spence has been a part of the historic Upper East Side since 1929, when the school commissioned John Russell Pope to design our flagship building, which is still on 91st Street. Since then, we have expanded through the restoration and adaptive use of two other landmark buildings, the Low Mansion, where our lower school is housed since 2002, and 17 East 90th Street, which is attached to the back of our flagship building on 91st, and that happened in 2010. When we saw these two row homes come on the market in 2025, we saw a generational opportunity to solve some of our academic needs and our operational needs. In the last 20 years, the world has changed, and so has our academic program. And we saw an opportunity to solve our programmatic concerns here and also maintain the architectural quality of the Low Mansion as it is. I want to share just a couple important points about this project. Since 2002, we have tried to use every inch of the lower school building. We have a very talented group of faculty and staff, but at this point, creativity is not enough to solve our needs. Our students, we also know, as all children are growing into a world where engineering skills, STEM skills are primary, and we simply don't have the space to fully house that program. So for instance, our current STEM lab is half of a classroom. So we often have our students trying their robots out in the lobby, that beautiful low lobby. We are also, as Shelley said, really, really eager to bring our fifth graders back into the lower school program. Fifth grade was always historically a part of the lower school at Spence and is only not in the lower school because of space. That has meant for the past 20 years, our youngest middle schoolers are in a program and a schedule that is structured for older adolescents. We keep them in homerooms, but it is not ideal. So we're eager to follow the research, which suggests that fifth grades are best suited in lower schools. So I hope that you can see from the plan that we've worked with our architects at MBB, our Board of Trustees, and school leadership to really have a thoughtful plan that again honors the integrity of the historic Low Mansion while also answering really needed academic and operational needs of our school. So thank you for listening, and I would like to welcome up our board chair, Kimberly Kravis, who will give a message from our trustees.
Thank you, Felicia. Good afternoon, commissioners. I'm Kimberly Kravis, a proud alumna and a parent in the school. And this afternoon, I'm speaking on behalf of the Board of Trustees who look at the Madison Avenue project as a generational opportunity that is both strategic and thoughtful. On a personal level, I was a student during the addition to the 91st Street building that transformed the school at that time, and have been a parent and a trustee during recent projects. What remains a constant at Spence is its thoughtful, strategic, and community-minded approach. As a parent, I've experienced the joyful place of learning that we have created in the lower school. And for the trustees, putting students and program at the center of every decision is a high priority. The trustees are stewards of this fine institution, and we take our job to care for the school, its mission, people, and resources very seriously. We are committed to engaging in this project with good care and a thoughtful approach to our neighbors and our community. We have a strong track record of responsible and responsive membership in the Carnegie Hill neighborhood, and we appreciate your trust and support. Thank you very much.
Hello, Commission. Thank you for your time and attention. I'm Sarah Grant from MBB Architects, and I will now take you through the plans. Thank you. So first off, we understand, of course, the importance of institutions like Spence to the overall character of this district. We also understand, as Felicia spoke about, the importance of Spence specifically within the district as stewards within the district, as well as the fact that they went outside the historic district for their larger program spaces when they constructed their athletic facility that is shown on the far right here. Felicia also spoke about the programmatic needs that are a critical driver for this project. Included, in addition to STEM, there is the need for play space and outdoor space for the students. There's also the need to make the row houses fully accessible, which they are not currently. There's also the need to replace aging infrastructure. The mechanical units that serve the mansion are at the end of their useful life, so the geothermal system that we are proposing is planned to serve both the row house addition as well as the mansion. So at the level of the block, you see, of course, not only the mix of uses, but also the mix of scales, which is a contributing factor to the district. Along Madison Avenue, there is a mix, of course. Many of the buildings are quite larger than we are. We are one of the smaller ones, as you see in the red square on the bottom. And then along 93rd Street, of course, the lower scale of the residential streets. And you will see our proposal is really to maintain this lower residential scale, even though the two buildings in question are along the avenue. Just by way of precedence, this commission has approved a number of institutional expansions. Some are quite modest in scale, like our own. Others are much more significant. And some do include the strategic removal of historic fabric. Within the district, there is also precedent and recognized importance of outdoor rooftop play space. So to take you through the scope of our application, as Shelley teed up, there are really two parts. On the mansion itself, it is the connection to the row houses, the rooftop play deck, and the geothermal system. Then on the row houses, which are shown on the left here, it is the enlargement to connect to the mansion and to align the floor levels, the rooftop play space, the geothermal, including one new piece of mechanical equipment, and the facade restoration. So starting at the mansion, it is an absolute gem. It is an individual landmark, and our intent is very much to preserve it. The row houses are very different in nature, so they are more modest buildings. They have stucco facades and limited ornamentation. You also see the window AC units and some of the stray cabling and just the general need for repair along with the replacement windows that are currently in place. At the street level, you see the more contemporary fabric, including the roll-down shutter that's currently in place and was previously also closed in this condition after business hours. The condition of the row houses themselves, as I said, not accessible, also not appropriate or safe for institutional use, and in general need of upkeep and repair. At the rear of the row houses, there is this one-story extension that we're looking at the roof of here, as well as the side wall of the mansion. And this is where our horizontal enlargement is intended to go. So you can see this is not a true rear yard, but a sort of narrow, less than 20-foot wide slot down to that one-story roof. And then at the rear of the row houses, so this is essentially that east facade or east face of the current row houses that are also utilitarian in nature with replacement windows. So these two buildings were originally part of a speculative residential development that occurred throughout the district by Ogden and Sons. And they've undergone significant changes over time. So on the left, you're seeing the original condition. So these are in fact our two buildings here. And then as part of a later renovation, the facade, the street was entirely reconstructed, as you can see here. And that in fact happened soon after the construction of the mansion. And then there were further renovations at the first floor before the inclusion in the district. So just to give you a little more history on the change of these buildings over time, they were originally a row of 5, and then you can see the second 2 in the row had vertical additions along with the 5th in the row. Following that, the first 2 in the row had their first floors rebuilt to align with Madison and serve as storefronts. And then that last step where the current configuration of the 3 was articulated really happened after the construction of the mansion. In contrast to some of the intact rows in the neighborhood, like what you see in the upper right, our buildings were necessarily repositioned from their original residential design following the construction of the mansion when much of the daylight to their rear facades was cut off. So to take you through the proposal, you're now looking at the existing and the proposed roof plans, where our proposal includes the enlargement to connect the row houses to the mansion. So that's this portion here, as well as the new rooftop play space spanning both buildings. We do have one piece of mechanical equipment as part of this new geothermal system. But removing the 3 pieces of mechanical equipment that are currently in place, one of those being the cooling tower, and then the rooftop play space, as I mentioned. So to take you through, starting at the mansion, so we're now cutting through 93rd Street and the mansion itself. And what you're seeing is the replacement of the mechanical equipment with the play area that is set well back in that street. We understand the front portion is highly visible, so we're setting the play space in the back portion where the mechanical is currently located, and that will have a 10-foot high fence as is required, as is the minimum height required by code for a rooftop play space. So showing you the existing section here through the row houses on the right and the mansion on the left. You'll note the existing mansion gymnasium is excavated to this level currently, and there is this lower play deck on the second floor of the mansion. Our intent is to keep that as it is because of its historic character, as you see in this drawing here. And then the proposed plan of creating these contiguous floor plates to align the new addition with the mansion, as well as that one-story addition that Shelley spoke about to align the rooftop of the new addition with the height of the existing mansion, and then the play space that is intended to span both buildings. You're also seeing here the red and blue dashed lines are intended to denote the geothermal system, which will serve both buildings. You see here a typical classroom floor, and we wanted to point out two items. One is the just extreme efficiency that we gain from this strategy of aligning the floor plates and creating these contiguous floor plates. So this gives us both, it's both good for pedagogy and the school functioning, but is also an extremely efficient approach combined with excavating down to the level of the gymnasium allows us to really conceal much of the bulk of the program needs. The other thing that you see in this plan is just the modest size of the classrooms that we are proposing as part of this addition. So now moving along from the mansion, the next sightline that we're studying is cut through the rear yard extension of 1311, so still at 93rd Street. And we're looking at the side wall of the mansion. And we understand the historic significance of that roof line of the mansion and are intentionally stepping back and shaping the upper portion of this connection out of respect for this roof line to allow that to still be legible on the street. So here you see the bulk of that as it would be from 93rd Street. And then the same thing in rendering form. So to take you through, this is the existing condition at 93rd Street today. And it really is a kind of layered effect where first you have the facade, the street wall facade of the northernmost layer. Then you have the side wall of the next neighbor in. Beyond that, you have their rear yard extension. Beyond that, you have our proposed side wall, which is a brick up until the cornice line, and then a bronze system up above that. And then so now we're 40 feet back from the corner. And then set an additional 2 feet back is this glassy link that is intended to be deferential to the mansion and is shaped to allow that cornice line, or the roof line, sorry, to remain. This is a nearby precedent of a similar kind of glassy link that is set back from the street and clearly separate and deferential to the surrounding historic fabric. So to move around the corner now to Madison Avenue, we're now cutting through Madison Avenue with the mansion on the left and the row houses on the right. And what we are proposing at this facade is to reset the cornice line and then have our 1-story addition above that reset cornice line. And then stepping back from that 1-story addition, our mechanical space, our mechanical screen would be 7'6" back from that. And the intent is that our mechanical screen and bulkheads act as a buffer screen between the street and the play space beyond that. So now looking from Madison Avenue, the current condition, the current mock-up that's in place, the netted portion that you see here is where that 1-story glass and bronze addition is intended to be. And then in rendering form here, we never take lightly the removal of historic fabric. After careful study of the proportions of the row and other buildings of similar age, we are proposing in this instance to remove the pediment and reset the cornice line. This does several things for us. One, it does allow us to get proper daylight into those classrooms at that floor level, with the introduction of new windows that match the punched openings below. Also importantly, though, it makes for a more proportional reading for the overall facade within the context of the row and the district. So the same in elevation form. First here you see the current with the dashed in of the prior facade heights. And then the proposed, showing you in elevation form, the street wall with the restored stucco, the new windows that will be consistent with the historic character, the new one-story addition, and then the mechanical screening, which, as I said, is set back from the street with the elevator bulkhead and the play space as the last thing above that. We know that the streetscape and the storefront is of utmost importance. So taking a closer look at that, as well as the LPC's storefront master plan, we know that there are no historic materials at that first floor. There are some historic materials, designated historic materials at the second floor that again later date from that later renovation. There is also, as I mentioned before, the shutter that's currently in place. Our proposal is to put back new materials that replicate the earlier historic condition on both the first and second floors. And then beyond that new glass and stone storefront, to have an interior art piece that is set back from the street that serves both as creating visual interest and visual screening, but also lets daylight into the classroom spaces. This will be something that is lit and is intended to add to the vibrancy of the streetscape. To kind of wrap it up, the existing south elevation, proposed very limited work on the mansion, including 2 new openings in a portion of wall that dates from the 2002 work. And then our new sidewall, which really what you'll see from the public realm is this portion, the kind of upper portion of the brick and bronze that will wrap that corner off Madison Avenue. Our materials are very much intended to pull from the historic neighborhood fabric, including and to be good quality, durable materials. So including the storefront stone and metal work, the brick at the sidewall, the new bronze and glass addition, including bronze screening at the mechanical screen, and then for the various play spaces, this vanishing coil, which is a very minimally visible material. So in summary here, just the overall components of our proposal. And then I do have a number of street views kind of documenting the visibility from the different angles. So both in the mock-up as it exists today, and then our proposed with the reset cornice line. And throughout these, you can see how we're intentionally pulling the bulk and the massing away from the mansion, and really being as deferential as possible to the history of that building. And then I am going to hand it off to Eric, who is on Zoom.
Hello. Good afternoon, commissioners. I'm Eric Zoller, Director of Teaching and Learning at Spence, and I've been part of the school community for 24 years, coinciding with our history in the Low Mansion. I'd like to briefly expand on 3 educational aspects of our proposed plan. First is grade 5, as Felicia mentioned. Although it has been housed in our middle school since 2002 because of space limitations, our 5th grade program has always retained many hallmarks of the lower school. A homeroom-based structure and a program designed for what research shows are the developmental needs of 10 and 11-year-olds, which include having one primary teacher, structured opportunities for play, and close home-school communication. Returning grade 5 to the lower school would allow our educational philosophy and our physical spaces to align once again. Second is the building itself. The contiguous floor plates that you heard Sarah describing, connecting the mansion and the row houses, will allow us to cluster homerooms for each grade on one floor, something we have long wanted to do but have been unable to do within the Low Mansion. That means stronger grade level communities, closer collaboration among teachers, and more effective sharing of resources and projects. And finally, the 9 additional classrooms and critically needed outdoor space are equally important. Young children learn by building, by experimenting, by creating, by asking questions and working together. Dedicated spaces for art, music, science, and engineering, especially for girls and young women, allow us to teach in environments designed for that work rather than adapting spaces intended for something else. These are thoughtful but really significant improvements that directly support how children learn, and they'll allow our facilities to better reflect the educational program that we have developed over so many years. With that, thank you for listening, and I will turn it back to Shelley.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Madam Chair. This completes our presentation. I just want to note that we are thrilled to have the support of Community Board 8, which has voted in a resolution to support the applications as presented. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Ginsburg.
So I want to understand something here, which is you're adding 1 grade. I don't know how many classrooms are in the 5th grade. You have on the upper floors, as I counted, 9 new classrooms. And then it's hard to tell on the lower floors, there seem to be somewhere at a minimum of 3 new classrooms. It's what's shown on the plans, and maybe more because we don't have plans of all of those. So there seem to be at least 12, and I understand 5th grade and also more STEM space. But can you just explain the number and why you need them all?
Yes, there are only 9 new classrooms in the row homes that we're proposing. 5th grade would take 4 of those, and then we need STEM, additional music, and visual art. We also need a dining room. Our students, because we have 1 dining room and we've not touched the Low Mansion, start lunch at 10:45 and the last seating is at 1:30, which is tough when you're a lower schooler. So it's just 9 additional classrooms.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Jefferson.
On page 25, that glass transition that you have, go to page 25.
All right, let me just flip back to it. Here. 25.
So that's the connection to the mansion. See where you have there, that's the glass portion that we see on page 33. Go to page 33.
Yes, correct.
That's it. Okay.
This is that portion that you see in plan.
Commissioner Mahan was next.
I was confused by the repeated statement that the row houses are receiving a 1-story addition. Could you point that out and explain that in section?
Sure. And it's like 1.5 really with the reset cornice line. So,
Like 2 with a slight of, with,
yeah, so
after you've added 1 and reset the cornice line, quote unquote.
so the current cornice line, and maybe it's cleaner just to talk in dimensions. The current parapet is at 53 feet. There are 2 different steps, so one of the 2 is higher than the other. And then our proposed new cornice, our proposed new cornice line is 6 feet 4 above that. And then the top of our addition is an additional 11 feet 1 inches above that. So I think the kind of cleanest way to look at it is the change in those 2 dimensions there from 53 feet up to 70 feet 5 inches. Because with the resetting of the floor levels, it really isn't a clean translation from, of 1 floor or 2 floors. It's really
We
somewhere
could ask
between
it
the
then
2.
in the exterior expression, is it, how many floors are you adding in the expression on the facade?
So it is 1 set of new windows in the stuccoed portion.
Okay.
And then the addition above that. So in that
Thank you.
sense, it is
Okay,
2.
I understand. Thank you.
Commissioner Ginsburg?
Okay, to follow up on my previous question, because I understand you've got 9 classrooms above, but in this section, below the kitchen's a classroom, then a STEM classroom, and then next to mechanical is another classroom. So that seems to me to be at least 12 classrooms, but you're saying there are only 9.
So we do have some special use spaces that we've labeled generically on these plans as classrooms. But I do know that every inch is spoken for in the plans. Typically with school clients, we don't share the full plans just out of for security reasons. So we thought it best to share the typical floor plan.
Okay,
But understood.
I just,
question.
okay, thank you.
Commissioner Goldblum?
Question, why do you need the extra elevator?
So their existing elevator is a hydraulic elevator that actually is at the limits of its possible, the number of floors that it can currently serve. So with the addition of the play space on the roof, we need to make the play space accessible. And we looked at possibly expanding the elevator in place, and it's just not technically feasible to do. The other kind of complication for them is that the floor plate is not big enough to allow for their kitchen and dining to happen on 1 floor. So their food service is actually transferring food from the kitchen to the dining floors and to the kindergarten floors. So it's a very heavy use by their dining team to make the facility function.
It seems like from a height perspective, a lot of the height of the building is driven by that dining floor. Need the new dining, I mean, like if there were height issues, let's say, if there were concerns about the height, could you accomplish the goal of having the floors more or less line by creating some kind of ramping between the old building and the new building that would allow for the addition to be lower?
So we have looked at ramped schemes, and there's just not a lot of length to work with, I think is the short answer. So there are a few things that we're considering, and one is just the available, because we're trying to create these very efficient floor plates, we don't have a lot of horizontal circulation to allow for long runs of ramps. We also had a number of conversations around, young children carrying their food on trays to, try to mitigate ramps. So it was functionally ended up taking up significantly more space, which ate into classroom space, which kind of had a snowball effect of creating the need for more overall bulk. It is something that we did study and did not result in a smaller overall bulk.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. Let's go ahead and move to testimony, and we'll start with people in the room that have signed up. And Lo Vandervalk, if you could please go to the podium, right there.
Right here.
Yeah, and just state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Lo Vandervalk. I'm president of Carnegie Hill Neighbors and representing their views. And we're very pleased to be able to testify here. You know, it takes a while to get used to a new project like this. And we were given very limited time going to the community board and then now to here. And you sort of have to get into a project of this scope to be able to come up with some independent evaluation. We did that. So originally, we did not ask for a lot of changes when we were at the community board. And by the way, the community board landmark committee voted 9 against the project and 1 abstention, I believe. And then that was overridden, which seldom happens, but you see a very divided vote at the full board. But we have reluctantly come to the conclusion that this project is not workable in its current format, current massing. And I want to just say one thing. We talk about programmatic needs. That's a term at the Board of Standards and Appeals. That's a zoning term. Programmatic needs, I do not believe, occur in the landmarks lexicon. So, but people constantly slip into that usage, and we think that's inappropriate. So what we have come up with is that the floor, we think there should be 1 less floor to make the bulk workable. And we feel that that there should be a 7.5 foot setback for the floor above, or if it's going to be 2 floors, we hope not, above the current cornice line. And efforts should really be made to lower that bulkhead above the current elevator. Finally, we want to say that there is historic fabric, the pediment on the, I think it's 109, or 1309, excuse me. We think that pediment should be, that's historic fabric, it should be preserved. Then I want to say something. This is one of 5 groups, this half block is one of 5 groups of half blocks in Carnegie Hill. They house all of the row houses in the historic district on Madison Avenue. So these are all in 5 half blocks. And so they really represent the charm and the historic essence and historic context of the row houses in Carnegie Hill on Madison Avenue. That's all there is, these 5 groups. And now one of these groups is being usurped and will end its...
I'm so sorry, that's time. Would you please summarize your points?
Reaching the limit. I've reached the limit. Okay.
Yeah, if you could just wrap up.
Yeah. So this building will sort of take over the half block of row houses that now exists just north of the Wales condominium. And that's a regretful development. And I want to say one other thing. The last edition for the Nightingale Bamford was on the 2 row houses that they had acquired a long time ago. So they did a rooftop addition, and you can't see that from the street or Madison Avenue. That's the nature of school improvements in Carnegie Hill. They're not, we shouldn't just talk about institutional improvements. So, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and next we have Zainab Turan from Friends of the Upper East Side Historic Districts.
Director Savage, Commissioners, Zainab Turan speaking on behalf of Friends of the Upper East Side. Friends can support this project if several key preservation concerns are addressed through meaningful compromises. We recognize that expanding educational facilities is a worthwhile goal and that the school has evolving programmatic needs that benefit the neighborhood. However, changing these needs should not come at the expense of the historic fabric or the historic streetscape. These requirements should be accommodated in ways that respect the historic context and preserve the architectural character that the landmarks law is intended to protect. Friends appreciates the limited scope of work proposed for the mansion and the retention of the character of the lower terrace. But we have significant concerns regarding the proposed alterations to numbers 1307 and 09, particularly the removal of the cornice to accommodate the rooftop addition. The designation report identifies numbers 1305, 07, and 09 as a single unified architectural composition created during George Victor Harvey's substantial 1932-33 renovation. Now, nearly a century old, that renovation is itself a significant historic intervention. Harvey added a fourth story number to number 1307, physically linked numbers 07 and 09, and redesigned all three buildings with symmetrical Neo-Georgian facades. Their unified massing, storefronts, fenestration, decorative detailing, and the continuous cornice with its central pediment are all cited as character-defining features that make the buildings read as one cohesive architectural ensemble. We therefore urge the Commission to require retention of the existing facades, including the continuous cornice and central pediment, and to mandate a minimum 7.5-foot setback for any rooftop addition as urged by Carnegie Hill neighbors. We are also concerned that the proposed glass and bronze rooftop addition is excessively bulky and visually overwhelming, particularly when viewed from the northwest corner of Madison Avenue and East 93rd Street. In addition to the setback, we urge the Commission to require a more meaningful reduction in scale by eliminating the story immediately below the top floor, combined with a smaller elevator bulkhead. These changes would substantially reduce the addition's visual impact and make it more compatible with the historic character of the block. With careful consideration of these modifications, the project can move forward in a way that respects the surrounding neighborhood while continuing to support the important work and mission of the school. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else in the room that would like to speak? Okay, not seeing anybody. Let's move on to Zoom with Elizabeth Lee.
Those joining via Zoom who wish to speak, please use the raise hand function. You'll be promoted to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute, state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. The first speaker will be the Historic Districts Council.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Manuel Fatima, and I'll be speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. The Historic Districts Council agrees with our fellow preservation colleagues that the height and scale of the proposal is inappropriate and incongruent with the character of the neighborhood. One of the defining features of this individual landmark is its roof line, and the new construction will drastically impact its curve. It is important to maintain the pediment of the mansion house facade as it is essential to the project. We believe that the rooftop addition could occur behind the composition and obscure it from street view. The historic fabric of the block can be maintained by decreasing the bulk of the building and retaining its front facade. Thank you.
The next speaker will be John Graham.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Graham for the Victorian Society, New York. The Victorian Society supports the carefully crafted testimony of the Friends of the Upper West East Side Historic Districts. We agree that it's important to support institutions like the Spence School, but in turn, these institutions have an obligation to uphold the highest preservation standards when they undertake work on their buildings. The project, as it is proposed, do not meet such standards. Numbers 1305, 1307, and 1309 Madison Avenue combined into a single unified architectural composition in 1932, nearly 100 years ago, by the architectural firm Moore and Lansadell, a firm which has designed several other designated landmarks in the Tribeca, Morningside Heights, Audubon Park, Park Terrace West, and Inwood Historic Districts. The symmetrical Neo-Georgian facades with continuous cornice and central pediment are the keys to this composition. Altering this as proposed would destroy this composition without creating anything of architectural value in return. The existing facades should be retained. A revised proposal that retained these facades would not solve the other problem with this scheme, which is the excessively bulky and visually overwhelming rooftop addition. This addition is problematic, not only when viewed from the northwest, from where it is most visible, but also when viewed from directly across the street and from the northeast, where it obscures the curvature of the roof of the William Godet Low House, which is currently seen against the sky. A much reduced addition and a more preservation-oriented approach to the Madison Avenue buildings are required before this proposal can be found appropriate. Thank you, Commissioners.
The next speaker will be George Janes.
Good afternoon. My name is George Janes. I'm an urban planner and zoning consultant, and I am here today at the request of Carnegie Hill neighbors. The elevator machine room at 56 East 93rd Street has been proposed to be located on top of the elevator shaft. This placement results in the elevator bulkhead sticking out about 10 or 11 feet higher than the other bulkheads and mechanicals planned for the roof. Even though this bulkhead is set back, the application shows that it is quite visible to the surrounding district. In tall buildings, we normally see the elevator machine room on top of the elevator shaft, but we have been seeing in shorter buildings, such as this one, the elevator machine room placed adjacent to the shaft, which would significantly lower the height of the elevator bulkhead. And here at the Spence School, removing the elevator machine room from the top of the elevator and placing it alongside the shaft would make a real difference in reducing the height and the visibility of the bulkhead, which is a major concern of Carnegie Hill neighbors. Also, lowering it by a floor would also make a major difference. Further, it is also concerning that there is no setback of the building above the existing structure. As you know, we normally see rooftop additions in historic districts with setback to lessen the impact of additional bulk on the district. In this case, the setback doesn't occur until the roof level, which isn't a setback at all. A setback of the building, or at least the top floor from the main street wall, would make a meaningful difference in the perception of bulk on the street. And then finally, for the record, and speaking for myself on this point, I want to note that this is another project that contributes to the depopulation of the Upper East Side, yet another project that replaces residential floor area with non-residential floor area, and which results in housing unit losses in the district. And while not necessarily the jurisdiction of your commission, you and the public should be aware that projects like this one have consequences that contribute to our ongoing housing crisis. So in sum, I hope the commission will consider design changes to lessen the impact of the addition on the district. Thank you.
The next speaker will be Bryce Marcus.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Bryce Marcus. I live on the Upper East Side. I'm the father of 3 Spence daughters, classes of 25, 27, and 2031. By the time my youngest graduates Spence, I will have walked one of my daughters to school for 19 straight years. I'm a Spence trustee, but today I'm speaking as a parent and a neighbor. I'm also the treasurer of Park Avenue Synagogue, another institution with the privilege and responsibility of caring for a historic building in Carnegie Hill. Serving both organizations has given me a deep appreciation for what stewardship means. I've come to appreciate that preservation isn't simply about protecting the past. It's about ensuring that the very qualities that made something worth preserving continue to serve future generations. The institutions that endure don't stand still. They remain true to their values while adapting to a changing world. Spence has done exactly that since its founding in 1892. What began with just 10 girls has grown into a school of more than 800. Yet its mission, even its motto, not for school, but for life we learn, remain unchanged. One of the things I speak about is what makes Spence so special. It is how much planning and rigor happen behind the scenes. But to the girls, it simply feels joyful and effortless. They never see all the work and discipline, and that's exactly the point. As I thought about this project, I realized thoughtful preservation is much the same. Most people won't notice the work behind it. They'll simply experience historic buildings that continue to enrich this neighborhood. This project isn't simply about adding space. It's about giving these remarkable buildings another century of life as a school, creating the learning space today's students need while making the long-term investments necessary to preserve the historic buildings themselves. The decision to invest in geothermal, for instance, is just one example of that long-term commitment. To me, that's what thoughtful stewardship looked like, respecting history enough to ensure that historic places and institutions continue to have a meaningful future. I hope that decades from now, parents will still be walking their children through those same doors, experiencing these remarkable buildings, but as vibrant places of learning that continue to enrich this neighborhood. I respectfully ask for your support. Thank you.
The next speaker will be David Cooperberg.
Hello. I'll be brief. I know it's been a long day for the commissioners here. I live at 1295 Madison Avenue, which is adjacent to the proposed extension. My apartment faces south, so while this project does not directly affect my views or me, it does affect my neighborhood. One of the reasons I moved to the Carnegie Hill neighborhood is because it is a village. It's a combination of apartments and storefronts and a lively place to live. And removing two storefronts permanently from our streetscape will be extremely detrimental to the neighborhood. My other point is actually the architects who have been quite clever in presenting this plan have been somewhat disingenuous to the commission. They started out saying it was a one-story addition. Now they admit it's a two-story addition. But when you add the playground and ball cage screening, it's nearly 40 feet above the existing level, which I read to be a four-story addition. And that is entirely visible from the street. The mock-ups that they showed from the red screening does not show all four stories of it. So I believe if you really look into this, you will see that this is massive, tall, and by the way, will add a lot of noise to the streetscape as well. Thank you very much for your time.
The next speaker will be Jeff Broadleib.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jeff Broadleib. I live at 1305 Madison Avenue, one of the three buildings that are connected by the pediment on Madison Avenue. I addressed a letter to the commissioners on Friday. I hope you've read it, had a chance to review it. Some of my comments reflect those of the previous speaker and speakers. And I'll begin and end with what was stated at the community board, which is to the applicant by the chair, I'm sure you can do better. And I believe they can. and I believe they can, without negatively impacting their mission. And so on matters of merit, which is before this board in terms of architectural review and historic preservation, there are the issues of design. Folks have spoken to the unification or the unifying pediment that would go away, the rise of a building 2 stories with the playground proud and above the 1305 building, totally breaking up the look from across the street, down the street, and so on. Secondly, scale. The scale is massive. As Mr. previous spoker just mentioned, it's a 40-foot difference. It's from 50, I have it written down from 53 feet to 90 feet. The numbers speak for themselves. And while you're looking at a scaffolding to represent the height of that, that's see-through. And if that were to be shrouded, and if the board members, commissioners were to view the property from the corners mentioned and from across the street, I'm sure you would appreciate the disharmony that the addition vertically represents. The historic context is lost in the pediment, as been previously said. It's been there for nearly 100 years. It's part of the neighborhood. It has historic fabric. Mr. Cooperberg just mentioned the noise and quality of life. That is going to be an issue, particularly to those who reside at the Hotel Wales, which sits above it. So I will end as I began with what the chair said. I am sure that the architects, the board, and the trustees, who, by the way, the trustees should be speaking when the school was presented, not as members of the public. That's just a matter of administration. But again, as the community board chair said, I'm sure you can do better, and I wish this board will vote to ask the applicant to come back with a plan that is harmonious to the historic nature of the neighborhood. So I thank the commissioners very much.
The next speaker will be Andrew Cronson.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Cronson. I'm a recent Columbia graduate and architectural historian. I've had the joy of sitting through many, many hearings to hear the tired cry that we need affordability in the city for places to live. And one of the consistent talking points that is stated in these meetings by members of the public like me is how we are in a housing crisis and destroying history is somehow justifiable in order to build, build, build. A similar case that we saw a couple of years ago of this sort of outsized bulk for a redevelopment was in 16 Fifth Avenue, which took a 20-unit townhouse and replaced it with 12 units. 10 affordable apartments were sacrificed for luxury that is largely empty. This commission has been far too happy to allow housing to be lost for other purposes. And ironically, in the rush to privatize all of New York, this instance happens to be taking floors of residential to be replaced with a $70,000 a year, roughly, private school. Those tenants are out of their homes to educate the progeny of the wealthiest among us. And I can tell you, coming from this world, it is really absurd to continue to see these types of trade-offs. You should question what is reasonable and programmatically pertinent, whatever the heck that means in an appropriateness context, when it comes at a cost to housing and a cost to these broader ideals that we all seem to hold true. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your hearing me out as always.
The next speaker will be Katie Day.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for your time today. My name is Katie Day. I am both a neighbor and a parent of 2 children at Spence. We live directly across the street at 51 East 93rd Street. We have lived there for the past 6 years, and we just renewed our lease, so we will be there another 7 years. So this renovation will definitely impact us as a neighbor in the Carnegie Hill community. And I would like to say I'm in full support of Spence and this project. The lower school is definitely massively space constrained. As Felicia said, My older daughter was eating lunch at 10:40 a.m. She therefore didn't want to eat breakfast in the morning, and she was starving by the afternoon. I think Spence has taken a rare opportunity to purchase a building, to responsibly expand their footprint in a way that is minimally impacting the surrounding neighborhood. But it will make a huge impact on the day-to-day life of these girls. I would also like to just comment on the noise level in the community. While I realize the playground on the roof can cause some noise, Spence did not they did not apply to keep the street access open past COVID. They only did it for 1 year. I think they've been incredibly respectful neighbors to the community, and they're trying to minimize the impact and the noise for the neighbors. I think that they've shown, they've been incredibly respectful neighbors during the previous exterior improvements. They recently finished or made some improvements to the exterior facade of the Low Mansion. They are responsible caretakers of this landmark property, and definitely more responsible than the owners of my historic building, I will say. I strongly believe that they've been thoughtful in the design process and will continue to be thoughtful stewards of these buildings in the future. I hope that you will approve this project. Thank you so much.
The next speaker will be Robert Fallon.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm really excited to be here virtually, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Robert Fallon. I am a trustee of the Spence School, and I'm speaking in favor of this project. I'm also speaking as a neighbor. So I live on 94th Street in Carnegie Hill, right near the proposed project. And I live with my family. My two daughters go to Spence. And it's a wonderful neighborhood that we treasure. The proposal to expand the lower school is absolutely mission critical for Spence. It's essential for the school and the quality of education that we provide. And we appreciate the support of the commission toward our programmatic needs. The place is a really joyful place of learning, and we are crammed, and I'll elaborate on that a little bit. I will be brief. As a trustee, I have first-hand experience with the thoughtful ways that the school has engaged in putting the curriculum at the center of this design for expansion. And I can assure you that there's been no spared effort to make this the least intrusive solution possible. This is especially true with minimizing the alterations to the Low Mansion. With regard to the mansion, Spence views it as an architectural treasure, and knows the importance of protecting its landmarks provisions as a single landmark. That makes the adaptive use and the expansion into the row houses essential. We really need the expanded space to achieve this. We currently maximize the mansion as much as possible. I know Felicia spoke about that, and we often change the space a lot just to make room for the programmatic curriculum. And so, one example is we've had this really growing need for our working families to have after school space. And so we adapt it many times for the day and then again after school to make room. The expanded kitchen and dining areas, they're also really critical. Just to elaborate, I know Katie just before me had said that her daughter eats at 10:40 a.m. That's very common for lunch. And then also, just as maybe this is more interesting as well, for the neighborhood, you will often see the kitchen staff kind of bolting down 91st Street with food because we don't have enough space in the kitchen in the lower school. So again, this is a really critical need. And then the last thing I'd share with you is just that, I'm a trustee and I'm in the meetings. We really consider the impact on the neighborhood. It's not something we take lightly at all. Spence was founded in 1892, I think is what we said, and in 1929, we came to Carnegie Hill. So it's approaching 100 years of being a good neighbor. And
I'm so sorry, that's time. If you could summarize your final points, please.
Sure. My last point is this. when people come to move to Carnegie Hill, I say come between 8 and 9 a.m. and see how people treat each other. And the schools are at the center of that. And so expanding this lower school would only increase those kinds of interactions and contribute to the warm environment. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Anyone else who wishes to speak, please use the raise hand function. Seeing none, I'll note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 8 recommends approval. LPC also received testimony from the New York Landmarks Conservancy and 20 individuals recommending denial.
Okay, would the applicant like to respond to any of the testimony?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few issues. We will review the transcript of the commissioner's questions and respond to all of them in writing so that there's a clear understanding of what our position is on them, because I think we could make that submission relatively briefly and make sure that we've provided the commissioners with the responsive questions they're asking. To the other questions that have come up through some of the testimony, I don't want to belabor any point which I know you feel is immaterial, possibly to the landmarks, to the commissioner's decisions, but I do have to correct the record on some points. First of all, the chair of the Community Board 8 at no time said you can do better. I think the gentleman is mistaking comments that were made at the committee level and not at the full board level. Secondly, Mr. James testified that there was a elevator mechanical room in our proposal above the proposed elevator. That is not the case. There is no mechanical room above the proposed elevator. We will clarify that in our written submission. Other than that, what you've seen here about use, we went into detail on programmatic need and what the school requires, only because it's been part of this discussion in the community from day one. You heard testimony here that some people think there should be retail stores in the building. Some people think it should be kept residential. I mean, this is Carnegie Hill, and there's a number of opinions about what makes the best quality of life. But in fact, the Spence trustees are very clear that they believe that schools are an important and contributing factor to the quality of Carnegie Hill, both in terms of its architecture and in terms of its quality of life, and that those values can be celebrated and maintained. You have a board here that's super focused on doing the right thing in terms of its stewardship of, this will be its third and fourth and fifth historic properties in the Carnegie Hill Historic District. There's never been a question about its stewardship or its maintenance of these buildings, or it's violating the principle that do no harm to the mansion. It's lived with that mandate for 20 years. It will live with it for another 25 years if necessary. But it does need to be able to have some opportunity to expand programmatically. And this opportunity, which was presented to it because of the adjacency of these sites, are foremost in its thinking in terms of solidifying its role as a major contributor to the Carnegie Hill neighborhood.
Great, thank you. And commissioners, Commissioner Wilder had a question. We'll see if there's other questions.
Yeah, just and sorry if I missed it, but a couple questions about the roof. One, can someone explain what the non-occupiable space, or clarify why it's that? And I asked that trying to get an understanding of if things can be distributed on the roof. Also, can you talk a little bit more about the ball cage? Is it open? What's the different uses compared to the gymnasium? Yeah, just more clarification on those elements.
Well, I mean, I will actually, let's do your first question, because we can provide you that answer, but not from me. So I'm gonna ask the architect to step back up and handle the issue of non-occupiable, and then we can come back and talk about the play spaces.
Yeah, so the non-occupiable area, that's actually that front section of the mansion roof. It's just highly visible. So to keep the play space minimally visible, we're stepping back from that area. In the previous approval that Spence gained from the mansion, I understand there was great discussion over where they could and could not locate mechanical equipment in order to maintain the kind of front section of this roof free and clear as you currently see it. So we're essentially respecting that previous decision direction by locating the play space setback. In terms of the ball cage area, that will have a fenced-in top, and that is as required by New York City Building Code for a space where there will be rooftop ball play. And the intent is very much outdoor ball play. You know, there's good data around the importance of outdoor play, not just play space. So that is the intent of having the open play space without the caged top on top of the mansion, supplemented by the space for ball play on top of the row houses.
Some of the same activities or?
So we have one gymnasium where all gym happens. I can't get to the slide, but that terrace is all our kids have for outdoor play space because we don't use street play. So research is about kids having outdoor play space as well. As the head of a girls' school, I can tell you, having worked in co-ed schools most of my career, very few schools where there's even one little boy don't have an outdoor ball cage or somewhere for kids to play. So I think it's an important investment for our girls to develop those skills outside as well. But we have one gym that's that underground space that the whole of the lower school uses. Having additional outdoor space with a ball cage means we can have gym at 2 separate times. I mean, we're constrained in terms of like one class at a time in the gym. So it increases opportunities for girls to play, to practice physical skills, and to have that part of their health be addressed. But that, yeah.
And how did you determine the amount of play space? Was it a code thing, or was it based on amount of occupancy, or what was the
How we determine the space?
size of the play space at the roof, play space and ball cage area?
In terms of square footage, yes, we do benchmark it off of best practices and code requirements. The truth is, even with the added space, it's well under the kind of recommended space per student.
Any other questions, Commissioner Ginsburg?
Before we leave that question, Madam Chair, I just wanted to point out one thing. Slowly here, apologies. Here we go.
There you go.
You'll see in the bottom center, that is the present play space, outdoor play space for the Spence School. And that is all original Walker and Gillette historic material. It's fragile. It's not really appropriate for serious kind of activities of any kind. You wouldn't want to be out there kicking a ball with that look, but that is really all Spence has at the moment. And as Ms. Daly testified, it's one of the few schools that does not ask for a street closing for its outdoor activities. So this is what is prompting the need to put play space where it can be used on the on the row houses and in a way that will not be visible on the mansion. Just want to point out the existing condition there, and that is the total allowable play space that the Spence School now has. Thank you.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
I just want to confirm what I think you said, but that you're using a machine roomless elevator so that the bulkhead is the minimum required height.
That is correct. We have continued to go back and forth with our elevator consultant over the last 2 feet of that because it does seem like a larger than standard overrun. And what we're showing you today, we believe to be the worst case scenario, and we are continuing to push them. I understand there's a possibility of removing the hoist beam after the installation that could result in lowering that overall height by about 2 feet, but that is correct. we are using a machine roomless elevator. There is no machine room up there.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Go to page 47. Of
47.
The last page. It's the last page, I think. Okay, the mansion, the back of the mansion, that's a play space, right? Yeah. But moving some of the program spaces over to the mansion, is that not possible, or is that some kind of agreement because it's a landmark?
So we did look at massings that moved some of the program space to that rear yard of the mansion. We also looked at going vertically up from the mansion, and in both scenarios, we felt like we were in direct conflict with the idea of doing no harm to the mansion, and we were putting at risk much more significant historic fabric. It also creates a floor plan that has significantly less daylight and is less appropriate for school use. But the guiding principle really has been that retention of what really is significant historic fabric at the mansion.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Master.
Yeah. One of the comments that we heard consistently from the public testimony was a desire for you to retain a little bit more historic fabric, especially I think along Madison, the cornice line and the pediment. Is that something you had considered?
We would certainly consider it. I do think, and this is something that we've looked at internally as well as with the staff here at the LPC, as well as this question of 2 versus 3 in the row. After studying both scenarios and multiple massings, we do feel that actually breaking the 2 from the 3 makes just significantly better proportions to the overall and reduces that perceived bulk of the addition above the cornice line. So we've studied it both ways. We would be happy to continue to work with you to study it both ways. But that was our opinion, as well as the daylight issue. So keeping the pediment does significantly compromise daylight to 2 of the classrooms, essentially.
Commissioner Mann. Sorry, there's a lot of competition.
We're all very engaged. I was going to make this part of my comments, but since we're still going on questions, that's really a question. This idea, this principle of do no harm to the mansion has been brought up a number of times. It's an admirable principle, surely, but I was just would like to understand a little bit more about where that came from. Is it a principle that you all set for yourself? I thought I heard you, sir, suggest that it was some sort of future restrictive declaration instituted by LPC at the beginning.
No, and I'm sorry if I gave you that impression. It is in the certificate of appropriateness for the alteration of the mansion that the primary instruction in the in that application, and we took that as something that had some future legs to it, was that the single family residential character of the mansion should not be compromised in any way. And if I could step away from the microphone for just 1 second. In the original application, this slope roof to make sure that the site in the read as the able to vote. Yeah, we should cancel. That
all to serve mission same stuff, including residential feel and it's not a restricted declaration.
And this is an application that was approved and executed? Was this built? I'm
Yeah,
very
This was part of our original certificate of appropriateness.
Okay.
2000 application in 2002.
Okay.
Before the alteration to the mansion, which included, as I mentioned, both a proposed fifth floor.
And so you
the
did
sixth-
build a
And the sixth floor was not ultimately.
did not do that. So you built one of the two floors.
So with that slope, that took
Okay.
care of its visual.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Gold.
So following up on what Commissioner Mann just asked about, and actually Everardo as well, tell me a little bit about why you feel that the creation of indoor space where it says outdoor play space would inevitably involve damage to the historic building and problems with daylighting. Explain to me why that, what's behind that comment?
So the space I was referring to is actually that lower second floor terrace where we feel that there's
That's
fabric
understood.
there.
But I think Everardo was talking about that one there on the roof.
I see. I apologize. That outdoor play space is just an equally critical program element to the indoor space. So if we were to locate, say, classrooms up there, one, you heard Eric speak about the importance of the kind of getting the grade level classrooms together. We would only get maybe 2 classrooms there. It's a very small area, so we would get essentially an orphaned classroom. So it's not particularly efficient or usable to create indoor classroom space there. And the trade-off would be that we would lose much needed square footage for outdoor space in an area that is usable as outdoor space.
Thanks.
Okay, any additional questions? Okay, not seeing any. I think that we can go ahead and close the hearing. And so Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Vice Chair Master, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the hearing is closed. And Commissioner Mahan, well, actually, sorry, I want to say a few words first, and then I'll turn it over to Commissioner Mahan to lead the discussion. So Commissioners, this is an application to accommodate the expansion of a school, as we've heard, including some related work at the rear yard of the individual landmark at 56 East 93rd, and to connect it to 2 newly acquired buildings on Madison Avenue in the Carnegie Hill Historic District. So it's a landmark and then 2 buildings in a district. The 2 Madison Avenue buildings were altered and repurposed many times throughout their history, and their current appearance primarily dates to the 1930s. As you heard, the scope of work is for the rooftop and rear yard additions, a play cage and mechanical equipment, and alterations to the Madison Avenue facades, including raising them a floor and replacing storefronts and combining the buildings internally. The Commission has approved visible additions in this historic district, especially along Madison Avenue, as well as sizable additions for schools and other institutions trying to meet their mission-driven needs. So we're looking at the design and bulk of those additions, mostly in the context of the Madison Avenue streetscape and roofscape. Okay, and with that, Commissioner Mahan, can I ask you to lead the discussion?
I'd be happy to. So thank you for the applicant for your detailed and thorough presentation, and for your patience with all of our questions. You certainly got us all quite engaged. I know this area well and noticed the rooftop addition just the other evening, so I walked up and down the street to have a look. And I concur with the applicant. If, part of what we are charged with is preserving and managing change of the character of historic districts and schools. and their presence and what they do for the community. And I think maybe it was one of the trustees, mentioned come walk around between 8 and 9. They are an important part of the character, of this historic district for sure. So I can definitely appreciate the needs of the school and their efforts to, in the past, adapt the mansion and now adapt 2 row houses for educational use and the complexity therein. One of I think the first in-person testimony by Lo Vandervalk, he was right when he said it takes a while to get into a project like this. It's complex and it's compact and dense. And so I might make a couple of suggestions, for how to help us understand it in the future. One might be to help us understand a bit better the work. Well, first, how the mansion works, what its plan and configuration is, and what and its history and the proposed work is there. I suspect, and I think in some of the visualizations, there is work there, but it wasn't really, explicitly described, and it's very important. And we would like to understand, the front and the sides and the back of the mansion and what is being proposed there and the history of change at the mansion, if any. This sort of idea of do no harm, but maybe that wasn't really the idea. Maybe it was don't change the residential character of the mansion. This was, I think, further muddied this understanding of the mansion and was proposed there unnecessarily. I understand there was a previous C of A. Here you are pursuing a new C of A. And I think that there are ways to adapt and alter the mansion without, challenging or eroding its residential character. These are the kinds of things that this, commission talks about all day, every day. My second suggestion would be perhaps if you come back, diagrams like that on page 46, which came very, very late in the presentation, would be tremendously helpful. I would love it if it were colored, if there were a before and after, if, these dense projects that snake their way through a block, they're like this 3D Tetris puzzle where there are insertions, there are additions, there are connections, and helping us navigate the issues that we, need to discuss, would be appreciated. Okay, so I wanted, I guess, to start by saying that it takes a while to get into this and talk about how we might be helped to get into it, because I suspect there are a lot of details that honestly we're not going to get to today in terms of materiality, connections to the building, entrances, profiles, that honestly I'm not going to comment on, and I'm not there yet because there are some larger threshold issues, but I think we're going to have to talk about those eventually. So I think I'll focus on the Madison Avenue row houses. In this part of Carnegie Hill, there's this kind of natural syncopation of scale along Madison Avenue, both in height and in width. And there's this sort of natural rhythm somehow. I don't, it's happened by market forces, but magically there is this kind of rhythm as you walk that street. And I find the alteration to the 2 Madison Avenue facades it disrupts that kind of natural rhythm. And I also find that it's sort of without grounding or justification at the moment. It just seems kind of random, to be perfectly honest. If we can just add, maybe it's okay to add one story to the front face of the street wall, but I don't really know why. As presented, the history of these three buildings, they were built together. They looked quite distinct from one another at first, and then they were kind of unified in three. And the proposal here neither looks towards this sort of history of distinction, nor, seeks to maintain the existing condition, which in of itself is almost 100 years old, or sort of even tries to reference to some other kind of larger urban, scale syncopation. So I'm not really sure where it's coming from, and it just seems very arbitrary to me. And I think, the proposal here that we're looking at is definitely to add 2 floors, not one. I'm afraid this idea of like resetting a cornice, never really heard of that. It was frankly a little disingenuous, in terms of what you're trying to do with the scale. So I'll move down, I think, to the storefronts. I would like to understand better what those will look like. I think some additional visualization at eye level, perhaps, somewhat close to the building would be helpful. It was, kind of just all white and quite abstract. We've looked at many different sort of storefront proposals for Madison Avenue, all, for blocks and blocks many times, and there is this sort of double height typology, but it has a kind of commercial feel. And what is the feel of this proposal going to be? It was a little unclear, but I think it has a significant effect, as many of the neighbors spoke about, on the character of life at the street. So I'd like to understand that more. And then finally, moving to the overbuild itself. I think it's honestly just much too overwhelming to the existing buildings. It's quite massive. I think that in and of itself, given the context, is not necessarily bad. There is, abrupt changes in scale up and down Madison Avenue, but they are overwhelming. It is overwhelming at the moment. It could have to do with setbacks, materiality, height. There are lots of different ways to address that, but overwhelming to the existing historic buildings. And I think it's important to remember when we think about how these pieces are arranged across the entire sort of campus composition, that these 2 row houses, while perhaps less notable, they're equally as landmarked, as the mansion. And so we should sort of consider the composition perhaps holistically. I think that those are my thoughts for today. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Wilder.
Want to thank the applicant for presentation, detailed presentation. Work that's, I can tell, has been done. Also want testimony to provide more project. I think something that the question I asked, and also through some of what Frank has mentioned, I think this notion that the mansion should not or cannot be touched is maybe creating more issues than justifiable when it comes to the overall problem I see, which is bulkiness and just I'm unsure how many floors we're adding. It's between the mechanical and the ball cage and the clean room and the additional floor with the increase in the floor heights on the floor below. It's somewhat confusing and or maybe just not fully unpacked yet. But the one thing that I can tell is that there is a specific portion that has had overwhelming amount of work done versus the other section that not been touched as much. And I think because they are historical, and I think they should share in the responsibility of how do we solve this problem of creating additional program for the building. It's almost like cheating in one way where you're using it for some things, but not using it for other things. And I think it's probably doing you a disservice. Um, and yeah, I won't. I'm not here to say how much play area is needed. I think they should definitely have as much play area as possible. But I do think, I don't know if removing a floor or reducing some of the heights or relocating this here or to the more away from 93rd Street, those really overwhelming, especially from Madison Avenue. And also, I think this is trying to show problems that kind of presented here. I can see why the increase of the cornice and bottom Madison could work. It's symmetrical. You have these two 5-story buildings on the other side. You're doing the same thing at the storefront. But I do think, and kind of what Frank was saying, that it does disrupt it in a way that I'm not sure it necessarily works. When we think about the history of these 3 buildings, they no longer feel like they have that history anymore. Although I think isolated it works, but in the context of what's there, probably a better solution. I don't know if it's setting back the roof addition and keeping the same cornice line that already existed. But yeah, I just think the rooftop addition needs to be investigated and worked on a little bit more, just to figure out how to bring the scale down. And I think, and if the storefront, I can't look at it in isolation as just this 2 buildings. I kind of have to look at it, and it's a lot of mess that's at the front, or things that we can't really understand what the facade looks like because of these canopies or awnings. So it would be good to maybe show more context for the adjacent buildings to understand what it actually looks like, especially the building that was part of the original 3. My thoughts for now.
Vice Chair Master.
First of all, I wanted to say how important I believe it is for Spence, an educational institution, to have to meet their programmatic needs. And I understand that, and I appreciate how important your mission is. So I want you to know that, in terms of the values of what you're trying to do, I'm very supportive. But I do share some of the thoughts of the other commissioners. And I guess my primary issue here is that, I think you're so respectful of the mansion as an individual landmark that you are not paying enough attention maybe to the Madison Avenue side, which is also in a historic district and needs to be respected as such. And my biggest issue is really the bulk of the addition on the Madison Avenue side. It's just highly visible. The massing is overwhelming. And I'm wondering if there's something that we can do to kind of reduce that. I'm supportive of the ball cage, and I understand that that's something that we typically have, some play area that's highly visible on a roofscape. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the other addition.
Um, I I did ask the question about the cornice line and the pediment, and I would like it if it would come back. It doesn't necessarily have to come back if you can justify to me, how, what you're creating here kind of fits in better with the other, with basically the streetscape on Madison Avenue. And I would love to have some more detail on what's happening on the first and second floor as well, because I think that's also important to the streetscape of what's happening on Madison Avenue. And I also share the thought of, and this isn't something that you have to follow, that I'm wondering if the mansion side can share a little bit more of the, the bulk. I think you were so respectful of it. But I think that what I'm hearing from the other commissioners, and I know I would be a little bit more willing to have, maybe some of that bulk transferred to the mansion side as well, because I think you do have some space there. But right now, I think that the addition really overwhelms the buildings on the Madison Avenue side.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
So following up on what the previous commissioners have said, and hopefully, I appreciate your need, and much of what's proposed is appropriate. I understand the conservation of the mansion, but as noted by others, there may be opportunities to reduce the height on Madison by adding something at the back of the mansion. I want to make clear there were comments about program, loss of housing, etc. That is not in our jurisdiction. And so the uses of space, whether there's commercial on the ground floor, is really not part of our mandate. Whether it should be or not can be a discussion. As anyone who knows me, I care deeply about housing, but that isn't what we can be judging here. And so like the storefront not being commercial, if that makes sense for your use, we're just commenting, or I am just commenting on the design of the storefront, which in general I think is fine. I also think the infill of the courtyard is fine, or what's called the horizontal enlargement. Geothermal is great. I've used it a number of times. It's the most energy efficient, long-term, lowest operating way to go. And it also gets stuff up off the roof, which is a big plus. And I know you want to use the roof for other things. The play space on the mansion, replacing the mechanical, is good and not very visible. So I want to concentrate on the Madison Avenue facade. I understand you did studies of other options, and maybe if we saw them, we would be more receptive what has been shown, is said. But it does feel much too big as it's shown now. So here are my comments, but obviously as one studies this, there'll be a back and forth. I think you need to keep the existing cornice in alignment with the adjacent building on Madison Avenue. The addition, particularly what I'll call the second floor, although I realize it only a half floor, should be set back so it doesn't overwhelm the Madison Avenue facade. I think other materials besides masonry on the side, potentially lighter, more glass or metal, again, lots of design ways to deal with that, will also help lighten and lessen the mass of the addition. I think it may be possible to slope the upper part of the cage in a bit, because when you throw a ball, it's an arc, it isn't straight up, so that it was a little less visible from the street. I'd also like to see the details of the cage and work on how you're going to minimize its visibility, because I know there are meshes that are almost invisible. I realize there'll need to be a steel structure and there's no way to hide that, but the more you can do to show how minimal. The elevator bulkhead, if you can get those 2 feet off, that would be great. And as I said, work on the materiality of that addition. And I would say, I think we're headed in this direction. I hope to see you back soon addressing my and other commissioners' concerns, because I very much understand your needs and want to, within what is appropriate, meet them.
Commissioner Quimby.
Yes. First of all, I think the goals of Spence are laudable, and I want it to be that you can obtain as much as you can. As I'm looking at the project, and I'm looking at the buildings, and I'm looking at the site, it may be that there's too much of an ask. And it might be that what's proposed as the program is actually too much to be supported by the site. So one thing I would actually may look at is actually prioritizing what are your biggest needs. In doing so, I think that will help lower the massiveness of the work that's being proposed on Madison Avenue. You did show that there has been precedence of a lot of change on that street, and I can accept that. But I would look at some of the material that has been preserved and see how that can potentially be integrated into the final design. I would also say the building on Madison Ave, it's too tall. And what makes it a little more difficult is that in addition to the additional floors, the rooftop elements actually overwhelm everything that is below it. So there's a proportion, scale, balance issue, and that should definitely be addressed. And as was spoken about already, I would also look at potential modifications that can happen at the mansion as well.
Commissioner Chen.
First of all, I apologize. The National Night Out press conference ran a little bit longer, and so I wasn't privy to the first part of the presentation, which I will look back at the video later on when I get a chance. Having said that, I share some of the sentiments of the commissioners. I think that they pointed out correctly. First of all, with at least with the housing issue, definitely it's not our jurisdiction, and just like Commissioner Ginsburg, I'm a staunch housing advocate. The tragedy here is that we also have very low birth rate, which is why it makes much more the replacement rate of 1.6 is not being achieved here, and so therefore this is that much more important for the school, unrelated to LPC, right? It's just and we are all living longer. And so this is a challenge, I think, and I also agree with the testimony. This program takes a little while to grow into it because of all the jigsaw puzzles that need to be fitted in. And I think many of the commissioners correctly pointed out the mass and the bulkiness and whether you can reshuffle the deck somehow. And so I would refrain from further comment and look forward to seeing what the solutions are.
Commissioner Jefferson.
The other commissioners are right about most of the issues, but I think you're almost there. I think you can really have a truly lovely building. We take a couple of steps back. One of them is, as the other commissioners mentioned, the mansion. You have to use portion of that room. There's no way you could. You have to redistribute the volume. On Madison Avenue, though, it's very interesting because the section that you had to produce this beautiful section, which is very difficult, where you had to align the floors. And by aligning the floors, you affected the facade. By affecting the facade, you affected the composition of the three brownstones. That's a difficult one to solve because you have two two brownstones with a different facade than the third one, and then you have the symmetry of the building itself. And some decisions have to be made about symmetry. That's a tough one. If the last slide, if you go to the next slide, 50, 40, 40, if you go to slide 40, you see how beautiful that facade is. That has to be maintained somehow. And the other issue is the storefronts. There is a problem of how, if we maintain the storefronts and we put a screening device so you can't really see in, that requires some really careful thoughts about how that's done. It'll protect the students' pain. My comments are that there's a certain amount of sensitivity care that has to go into section. How you do that and distribute the load is where the challenge is. And I think you're almost there in solving that.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Thanks. Okay. I really think that the conversation's been very interesting, and I think a lot of very important points have been raised, and I'll just add a few comments onto it. I think, I don't know if, these are just my comments. I don't know if others would find them interesting or useful or appropriate or not, but looking at this facade, what I think is important about this facade that could be focused on as they think about how to integrate this very large volume into something that would be considered appropriate is, like Everardo said, the symmetry of it. I mean, of course, the best solution would be to buy the next door townhouse and then this whole problem goes away. But barring the possibility of that, I think what's important here is symmetry. And I think one thing that I noticed that was a change, apart from the obvious change of bringing the facades of the two townhouses up, was they eliminated that seam between the two townhouses, which I assume is a step in plane of some kind. Big mistake. I think that from a symmetry perspective, I don't think the material of the townhouses is significant. These are newish, they're modifications of the historic stuff. So I don't think the materiality is critical. So what I would say to focus on is maybe leave the center element high, maybe reconstruct the pediment up high, if that's something that people are attached to, and focus on the bulk of the northernmost townhouse, where that symmetry is really lost. So thinking about the composition as a streetscape, which is, I think, how people experience these townhouses, might be an interesting way to, obviously the commission's pointing you towards modifying the bulk in such a way that it reduces the apparent impact on Madison. So what I'm suggesting is think about modifying it specifically with a view towards maintaining the symmetry on Madison. And even if that symmetry isn't the original symmetry in its exact form, I think I personally would be okay with that. And I think there's lots of ways to imagine a neo-federal, or Georgian one more story high thing that would allow you to maintain that symmetry, maintain the flavor of the streetscape without significantly reducing your bulk. And I think for the portion that is not trying to do that job, that a setback is necessary. I think 5 feet is plenty. We do that all the time. I think the general approach of this facade of using a kind of north light, artist's loft kind of appearance for that addition, I think is totally a good one. But I think the focus should be on maintaining the symmetry, and even if that involves modifying the materiality of those two townhouses. That's number one. Number two, echoing what everyone said about the mansion, I think we can take a little bit of visible bulk on the mansion if it were subsidiary and subtle and set back. And I was kind of curious. I mean, two things that kind of go to the program, and I think several other people noted it. not having the plans, I know you want to do security concerns, but I think the plans are going to be filed with the DOB anyway. It's going to be public record. So I think our being able to see the plans would give us more tools to think about what's going on. But one thing that I thought might be useful would be shifting the core to the south side of your new building instead of to the north. That would allow you to have the elevator bulkhead to be less visible from 93rd and probably from Madison as well. Again, I don't know what the internal implications of that would be, but I think it certainly would be visually an improvement. I also think that, talking about, and Frank started this and others talked about it as well, the streetscape. And the streetscape made me, the whole section made me think about the Friends School down in the East Village, where a very similar thing was done, where they bought a bunch of townhouses, and then blew out, gutted them, and threw the floors where they needed to be for whatever internal calculus they had. And what was very important with that scheme was our being able to determine how that reshuffling of the floors and spandrelization and kind of doing all this kind of funky stuff to make that work, how that would look, because it's going to be visible. And I think you're considering that and you're presenting it to us as an element of appropriateness is very important. I think that placing the kitchen on the second floor where it's very visible seems kind of like a waste. I think the whole notion of what should be done on those two floors, that's the streetscape. And granted, it's not going to be a boutique or a fancy cafe, but it's a school, and the opportunity to have it to be animated as a streetscape element, I think is very important. So the consideration of the relationship between the interior uses and what one sees, I think is very important to consider and for you to present to us. That's it.
Okay. So I think you heard a lot of comments from our commissioners. So I think the best thing to do is to work with staff, as we, gather all of those and, see how you can address some of the issues that the commissioners brought up. And we'll bring you back whenever you're ready.
Thank you, commissioners, for all the thought and comments. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. And that concludes the hearing for today of July 28th, 2026. We thank you all for your participation, and we will see everybody next Tuesday, August 4th, for our next public hearing and public meeting. So thank you.